On August 10, 2018, a team of researchers studying marmots in Washington's Olympic Mountains made a disturbing discovery: a set of human remains. The body was identified as Jacob Gray, a young man who had vanished over a year earlier. But things got stranger. When more search teams arrived the following day, they uncovered bones belonging to not one, but 3 different people. Alongside Jacob's remains, they found fragments from 2 other individuals: a cell phone, tattered clothing, and a wallet. Even more bizarre, 3 arrows were stuck upright in the ground nearby. When data was pulled from the recovered phone, it suggested something horrific. Jacob may have been hunted and killed by something massive, a possible giant humanoid. The sheriff on the case even speculated that the area might be a human dumping ground, or perhaps even a nest. Let's rewind. Jacob Gray vanished in early April 2017, a time when Northwest Washington was still gripped by freezing weather. But Jacob, a skilled mountaineer and avid surfer, wasn't one to be deterred. He grew up in Santa Cruz, California, and lived for outdoor adventure. Obsessed with the wilderness, he decided to set off into the Olympic Mountains without telling anyone. On the evening of April 4th, amid heavy rain, Jacob loaded up his gear and set out. He was on a bicycle pulling a custom trailer his father had modified. This trailer, compact and rugged, carried everything: food, camping supplies, and a composite bow with arrows, useful for hunting or protection. His target? The Hoh rainforest deep within Olympic National Park. Now this park is unique, nestled in the northwest corner of Washington, bordered by the Pacific Ocean. It features beaches, dense forests, and snowy peaks, with climates that shift dramatically. Importantly, 96% of it is pristine wilderness, untouched since it gained protection in 1976. Jacob was lured by its wild, mysterious atmosphere. But just 2 days later, on April 6th, hikers on the Sol Duc Trail stumbled across something troubling. Jacob's gear. His bike and trailer were found tipped over, covered with a tarp. Everything was still inside. That same day, Officer John Bowie and Huo Lingen examined the scene and found a notebook identifying the owner as 22-year-old Jacob Gray. Nearby were 4 arrows, stuck straight into the earth. Here's what's weird. The bike and trailer were in perfect condition. No flat tires, no damage. Following the trail from there leads to the temperate rainforest and up into the alpine heights of Lynx Ridge. Once Jacob was declared missing, local authorities acted fast. The next day, 30 officers and K-9 units combed the area. Jacob's parents arrived quickly, putting up missing person posters at trailheads and rest stops, hoping someone had seen him. But after a month of searching, no trace was found. Then, over a year later, on August 10th, 2018, a breakthrough. Researchers stumbled upon a human leg bone near Lynx Ridge and alerted the Clallam County Sheriff. Police arrived the next day, and after venturing into the forest were met with a foul stench. They discovered more bones, scraps of clothing, a phone, and a wallet. A short distance away, they located a broken post, a backpack with food and a water filter, and a collapsed tent. Again, 3 arrows were stuck upright in the ground. The items matched Jacob's gear, but according to Sheriff Will, they found more than just Jacob's remains. Some bones belonged to other humans, and even animals. The coroner confirmed that additional remains came from 2 other missing persons: Jack Maxon, a 34-year-old hunter gone missing in 2010, and Diane Bruno, a 33-year-old hiker last seen in 2012. Jack vanished during a hunting trip, Diane while hiking alone. Jack and Diane's bones were far more decomposed, completely bleached, suggesting long exposure. The discovery site wasn't near a campsite either. It was found 11 miles from the Sol Duc Trail, in a brutally remote section of the park, 6,000 feet above sea level, a place even seasoned climbers would find hard to reach. No signs of human activity were found nearby. If someone was disposing of bodies out there, it would be like they were a ghost. There were no shelters, no caves, no hidden camp, nothing. Even more telling, Jacob's wallet, complete with cash and credit cards, was left untouched. A careful killer wouldn't do that. Wild animals? Unlikely. Jack was an experienced hunter, armed with a high-caliber rifle and machete. It's hard to believe even predators in Olympic could overpower him. And how the bones were found, grouped oddly, with leg bones and ribs together, pelvises and other fragments off to the side, doesn't match animal behavior. Then investigators found something else, a short video on Jacob's phone. just a few seconds, but chilling, it showed a black, furred creature standing upright staring at Jacob's tent. Tanya Barbara, a Bigfoot researcher, viewed the footage and said it confirmed her worst fears. Jacob may have been killed and consumed by Bigfoot. Tanya is part of a leading research team that's been investigating Bigfoot sightings since 2008 and assisting in missing persons cases in forests across America. She shared her theory with law enforcement. But even with that lead, authorities couldn't say for sure what had happened. Further digging into Jacob's phone revealed another clue. He'd tried calling 911 on the night of April 5th, but the call never connected due to bad reception. Jacob's mother, Laura, later contacted psychic Lynn May, who claimed Jacob had been fleeing for his life that night, so desperate he left his belongings behind. Lynn said Jacob had been caught and brought back. Whatever had chased him, she claimed, was not human. Despite Lynn and Tanya's statements supporting the Bigfoot theory, many questions remain. Why were Jacob's bike and trailer discovered 11 miles from his remains? Why were both sites marked with stakes or arrows? Was Jacob trying to communicate something? Based on his route, it appears Jacob was traveling southeast from the Sol Duc Trail toward Woe Campground. He likely biked in until he could go no further, then ditched the trailer and hid it with a tarp, marking it carefully. He only took what he needed: a tent, a backpack, a water filter, and his bow and arrows. He made camp somewhere secluded. That night, April 5th, Jacob heard something strange just outside his tent. It wasn't the typical rustle of wind through branches or the distant call of wildlife. This was deliberate, heavy, unsettling. Something, or someone, was out there. Fear surged through him. Alone, vulnerable, and deep in an unforgiving wilderness, Jacob made a split-second decision. He bolted. Abandoning his gear, he ran into the dark forest, desperate to escape whatever was stalking him. By morning, he managed to gather his composure enough to document what he believed had been following him. Using his phone through a small telescope, he captured footage of a massive figure, covered in dark fur, upright and silent, looming near his abandoned campsite. The creature easily dwarfed his tent, which stood just over 3 feet tall. It wasn't merely its size that unsettled Jacob. It was the way it watched, calculating, still, as if it understood. This wasn't some lumbering animal reacting to fear or instinct. It was something far more intelligent, far more territorial. It observed before it moved, and once it chose to act, it was already too late for its prey to escape. Jacob had a composite bow, arrows, survival tools, but none of it would have been enough. Against something that large, fast, and potentially predatory, his options were few. Even if he tried to fight, his chances were slim. Even if he tried to flee, he wouldn't have outrun it. Despite the eerie footage and strange findings, Jacob's parents never fully subscribed to the Bigfoot theory. They clung to more conventional explanations. His mother, Laura, believed her son may have fallen victim to a bear attack, or perhaps a deadly rock slide. Something tragic, but explainable. She told investigators that Jacob had changed after her divorce from his father, Randy. Once cheerful and adventurous, he had become increasingly withdrawn. He left community college not long after enrolling and began working at a local rock climbing gym, seeking solace in physical challenge and solitude. Still, Jacob never stopped dreaming. He saw himself as a modern-day nomad, a soul chasing freedom across the map. The Olympic Mountains were just the beginning. His ultimate goal was to make it to Florida, where he planned to reconnect with his brother, but that journey never came to pass. Months after his disappearance, Jacob's father returned to the site where his son's remains had been found. In the thick, lonely wilderness, Randy discovered a small bone, part of Jacob's finger. Rather than handing it over to authorities, he made a deeply personal decision. He dug a small grave right there on the mountain, gently placed the bone inside, and marked the spot with a cross made from rope and wood. A memorial, a promise, a father's way of saying goodbye. Jacob wasn't the only one whose life ended on that mountain. Jack Maxim and Diane Bruno, both of whom had vanished years earlier, were also linked to that same remote stretch of forest. Their remains, scattered and sun-bleached, told no clear story. Like Jacob, they had entered the wilderness seeking solitude or challenge, but they never came out. Whatever happened to them remains locked in the silence of the trees. The Olympic Mountains, ancient, vast, and largely untouched, have always carried a certain mystique. For all our maps and satellites, there are still corners so wild, so remote, that they resist human understanding. The truth behind the disappearances of Jacob Gray, Jack Maxim, and Diane Bruno may one day come to light, but for now the answers remain buried beneath thick canopies and moss-covered stones. The mountain still holds its secrets, and it isn't ready to let them go.
In April 2020, a hunter discovered skeletal remains in a valley in the Sawtooth area of northwest Idaho. The remains belonged to Todd Holland, who had been missing for nearly 10 years. Nearby, they found his belongings: a backpack, binoculars, a sleeping bag, and a badly corroded camera. The police managed to recover photos from the camera's memory card, and one of these photos was so chilling that it shocked everyone who saw it. On September 25th, 2010, Todd, who was 39 at the time, decided to go hunting in the Sawtooth region. He brought along his friend Jeff to search for black-tailed deer, was an experienced outdoorsman, and prepared carefully for the trip. He packed overnight camping gear, a .357 Magnum revolver for protection, and his beloved black Labrador Retriever, Ruby. Their destination was a mountain called Seven Devils, named for its steep and rugged terrain. September was prime season for black-tailed deer to gather and breed in the area. The plan was to complete their journey in 4 days, with the hope of enjoying the breathtaking views of Hell's Canyon along the way. However, things didn't go as planned. On the third day, Todd began experiencing severe knee pain. To avoid delaying the hunt, Jeff suggested they rest at a place called McPhail Ridge, with the idea that Jeff would reach the destination and return later to meet Todd. Jeff even contacted his father, Steve, to join him for the trek to Seven Devils. When Jeff and his father returned to the meeting point on September 28th, Todd was gone. They searched the area but found no trace of him. Concerned for Todd's safety, Jeff reported his disappearance to the police. Authorities launched a massive search operation across the Sawtooth region, employing helicopters and search dogs, but they found nothing. The sheriff called Jeff in for questioning and administered a polygraph test. Jeff's answers raised suspicions. He was inconsistent and failed the polygraph. Despite this, both Jeff and his father denied any involvement in Todd's disappearance or death. Todd's father, Steve, stormed into the police station, furious, demanding to know why his son was being interrogated, insisting Jeff wasn't a murderer. Meanwhile, the sheriff interviewed Todd's wife, Julie, for further insight. Julie painted a troubling picture of Jeff's behavior, describing him as unreliable and aggressive, someone who often teased Todd. She mentioned that Jeff had a history of breaking promises and even abusing his pet dog, as well as making inappropriate jokes toward her. However, the police felt these details only highlighted Jeff's poor character and did not provide direct evidence to solve the case. Just as the investigation was hitting a dead end, the sheriff's office received a mysterious phone call. A couple hiking in the mountains had found Todd's dog, Ruby. They recognized her from a missing dog poster and brought her back. Todd's family confirmed it was indeed Ruby. Aside from mild dehydration, Ruby was in good health, but something was strange. Her collar and dog pack were missing. Finding Ruby gave the police renewed hope that Todd might still be trapped somewhere in the valley. The search team took Ruby back to the area, hoping she would lead them to Todd. However, Ruby's behavior was unsettling. She trembled, barked, and whimpered in a way that suggested she was terrified, as if she sensed something evil in the mountains. On October 6th, the authorities launched another large-scale search around the area where Ruby was found. They covered almost all the nearby regions where Todd might have gone missing. Julie even brought in a clairvoyant named Lynn May from California to help. Lynn claimed that Todd had been killed by a tall man and buried at the base of a mountain near Seven Devils. Holding on to hope, the authorities sent out 7 teams with search dogs to the location Lynn described. But once again, they found nothing. The search officially ended on October 21st, and the authorities concluded there was no way to locate Todd, closing the case. In April 2020, a hunter near the mouth of the Bernard River made a chilling discovery: a set of human bones. DNA testing later confirmed that the remains belonged to Todd Holland, who had been missing for 10 years. His backpack and camera were found nearby, but his revolver was nowhere to be seen. Due to the extended exposure of Todd's remains to the elements, there was not much usable evidence left. As a result, authorities ruled Todd's death as an accidental disappearance. To this day, his case remains an unsolved mystery. The case has sparked ongoing discussions, with key points raising questions among online communities. First, How did Todd's dog survive unharmed in the wilderness? Without food, a dog raised by humans would struggle to survive in the wild. Who removed the dog's collar and Todd's backpack, and why? Second, why wasn't Todd's gun found near his remains? As an experienced mountaineer, Todd knew his revolver was as vital as his supplies, especially in an area inhabited by cougars, wolves, and other predators. Third, why did Todd leave the agreed meeting point? He had sufficient food, water, and a sleeping bag. Camping in place and waiting for Jeff to return would have been the logical choice. Lastly, Todd's remains were found near the mouth of the Bernard River, dozens of miles away from the meeting point, with an injured knee. How could he have traveled so far? Several plausible theories about Todd's death are circulating online. One theory suggests an accidental shooting cover-up, positing that Todd was accidentally shot by Jeff or his father. They might have transported Todd's body miles away to stage a fake scene. The area where Todd's remains were found is dense with vegetation, making it hard for helicopters to spot the body. Todd may have removed the dog's collar and backpack to make Ruby more comfortable in the wild. The dog, frightened after witnessing Todd's death, could have run off. The missing revolver might have been lost during the transportation of the body or deliberately hidden. Another theory suggests animal threats. It is possible that Todd left the campsite after spotting signs of nearby predators. He may have been left seeking a safer location when he was injured or killed.
One online user pointed out that Devil's Mountain is covered in unstable rock formations prone to landslides. Todd might have been struck by falling rocks, leading to his death. His dog may have survived by eating food from Todd's backpack. A more mysterious theory involves Todd being stalked and killed by a cryptid-like creature. This speculation is tied to a haunting photo recovered from Todd's damaged camera. While most of the pictures were of scenic landscapes, one photo stood out. It captured an eerie moment when Todd seemed to be under the gaze of something sinister. The image was blurry and hastily taken, suggesting Todd was in a panic. These theories continue to fuel debates about the tragic and mysterious death of Todd Holland. This photo was the last one on Todd's camera. Perhaps he was attacked immediately after taking it. The area where Todd's remains were found was lush with vegetation and near a water source, conditions that could support the presence of large creatures. Todd was nearly 6 feet tall, and moving his body such a distance would require immense strength. The creature in the photo resembles reports of a large, hairy humanoid creature known as the Grassman. Sightings of this being have been reported across several U.S. states. Named for its shaggy, grass-like fur, witnesses describe it as standing 7 to 8 feet tall and weighing around 500 pounds. It is speculated to be a giant subspecies of Bigfoot. Grassmen are said to be nocturnal, with glowing eyes and loud roaring calls. Some claim they emit a foul odor and attack dogs or people traveling alone at night. According to Lynn May's account, Todd was killed by a tall figure. Perhaps this tall figure was indeed a Grassman. If we place ourselves in Todd's situation, the fear must have been paralyzing. In moments of extreme terror, it's hard to react logically. The fact that Todd managed to take a photo was an act of great courage. He might have forgotten about his gun, or had no time to use it before the attack. Of course, this is just one interpretation. The creature in the photo could also be a standing bear. The mystery of Todd Holland's death might never be solved. After the incident, many blamed Jeff for leaving Todd alone in the wilderness. Experts noted that being injured and alone in the wild is practically a death sentence. Todd's wife described him as a kind and generous man, someone who rarely said no to a friend in need. Despite Jeff's history of mocking Todd, he still agreed to help his friend climb Devil's Mountain and search for black-tailed deer. For Todd, Devil's Mountain truly lived up to its name. One can't help but wonder if Jeff will carry the guilt of abandoning Todd for the rest of his life. But the strangest thing about this story is not even the photo itself, but how quickly contradictions began to appear around it. It would seem that the remains found in the latest camera images should have shed light on the mystery. But instead, there are only new questions. Immediately after the footage of the alleged Bigfoot fell into the hands of the police, a copy of it somehow ended up on the internet. Who leaked it? The investigators claimed that there was only one such photo, but independent researchers claim that there were several more frames on the memory card that were never published. The question is why? This is where the conspiracy theory layer begins. Some believe that law enforcement agencies deliberately conceal evidence of Bigfoot's existence in order not to cause panic. Others claim that much more serious forces are involved in the case. Idaho is a region with a rich military history. There are training bases, old mines, and even closed areas where ordinary people are strictly prohibited from entering. Some cryptid researchers believe that encounters with creatures from the forest are not an accident, but a side effect of experiments that are conducted in isolated areas. Maybe what Todd captured in the lens is not a mythical creature at all, but the result of secret developments. It is curious that such stories are repeated over and over again. In 1967, the famous Patterson and Gimlin video was shot, where a Bigfoot was recorded in California. Immediately after the film's release, many witnesses began reporting pressure from the authorities. Someone was persuaded to recant. Someone was hinted at career problems if he continued to speak. And this is despite the fact that no proof of forgery has ever been found. The same is true in the Todd Holland case. On June 9, 2013, 51-year-old Dale Steeling mysteriously vanished in Mesa Verde National Park, Colorado. 7 years later, on September 17, 2020, his remains were discovered by an anonymous hiker on a low-lying mesa in the Montezuma Valley, about 6 miles from where he initially disappeared. By the time he was found, Dale had been reduced to a pile of bones. Not far from the remains, investigators located his glasses, cell phone, and ID. Chillingly, several massive footprints were also discovered in the immediate vicinity. When authorities finally examined Dale's phone, they uncovered utterly bizarre and terrifying contents. Given that the disappearance occurred near ancient Native American ruins, wild speculations quickly turned this tragic case into a bizarre, paranormal mystery. The disappearance. Dale Steeling, originally from Texas, was a devoted family man who shared 5 children with his wife, Diane. He worked diligently as a meat cutter at a processing company, and thanks to his sociability and hard work, had recently been promoted to marketing manager. Friends and colleagues described Dale as mild-mannered and deeply loyal. Standing at 6 feet tall, 1.82 meters, with piercing eyes and a thick beard, he was easily recognizable in a crowd. In June 2013, Dale decided to take his wife and parents-in-law on a cross-country RV road trip. On June 9th, the 4th day of their journey, they were heading toward New Mexico after visiting the Canyon de Chelly National Monument in Arizona. Suddenly, their RV broke down. Forced to wait for repairs near Mesa Verde National Park, the family decided to kill time by visiting the park, specifically targeting the Spruce Tree House ruins. Mesa Verde National Park, located in western Colorado, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site that preserves some of the most intact ancestral Puebloan ruins in the United States. Spanning 5,248 acres and featuring over 600 cliff dwellings, it is a crucial archaeological treasure. The ancestral Puebloans, a Native American culture of the Southwest, were renowned for their adobe and stone architecture, dating back over 1,300 years. The legends of the forest. According to ancient indigenous folklore, these forests are home to giant, hairy ape-like creatures. Legends say these beasts are shapeshifters, capable of transforming into animals or humans to deceive hunters, only revealing their true, monstrous forms when struck by an arrow. It is said these creatures can turn invisible instantly and teleport across distances. To the ancients, these hairy behemoths were interdimensional beings, a bridge between humanity and nature. However, in the lore of other North American tribes, the Sasquatch, or Bigfoot, is a symbol of evil, known to abduct children and attack lone hunters. It is said that if you are walking alone in the woods and hear a strange melodic whistling, you must beware. It is their hypnotic lullaby, designed to lure you off the trail. Due to the rocky cliffs of the region, ancient peoples carved images of these creatures into the rock walls, referring to them as rock apes. Into the unknown. At 4:30 p.m. that afternoon, Dale was captivated by a distant ancient ruin. He told his wife Diane that he was going to hike up to the site alone. Oddly, Dale didn't take the main path. He opted for a rugged, isolated trail, perhaps thinking it would be a shortcut. It was a steep, narrow 4.2-mile loop trail, where one misstep over jutting rocks could send a hiker plummeting into the canyon below. Before he left, Deanne asked if he wanted to take a bottle of water. He declined, insisting he would be back shortly. Along the way, another tourist accidentally captured a photo of Dale walking down the trail. After his silhouette disappeared around a bend, he was never seen alive again. An hour passed. Growing anxious, Diane called her husband's phone, but he didn't answer. She then contacted park management, who told her not to panic and assured her Dale would likely return soon. After another hour passed with no sign of him, Diane called the police. The search and the Discovery Park Rangers and local police immediately formed search and rescue teams, scouring the canyon. The intensive search lasted 2 full weeks. At its peak, the operation utilized 60 searchers, 2 K-9 units, a helicopter, and a cliff-climbing rope team. Although the park isn't massive, many archaeological zones are entirely off-limits to the public and remain rugged and untouched. The treacherous terrain made the search incredibly difficult. We conducted massive sweeps of the area, the local sheriff stated. In November, we sent another K-9 team out to look for his remains, but we found nothing. I still keep Dale Staling's photo and case files on my wall. The park sees about 5 to 10 missing persons a year, but Dale's case is by far the most bizarre I've ever encountered. If he fell off a cliff and got wedged between rocks, even a helicopter wouldn't be able to spot him. Fast forward to September 17th, 2020. An anonymous hiker reported finding skeletal remains in the Montezuma Valley. Authorities rushed to the scene and confirmed it was Dale Stealing. The chilling phone records. When investigators recovered Dale's phone, they checked his digital footprint. Call logs showed he attempted to make a call around 7 p.m. on the day he vanished, but it failed to connect. He then tried to leave a voicemail, which also failed to send. It was clear he was in an absolute dead zone for cell reception. But it was the photos gallery that truly baffled investigators. The first few pictures showed Dale navigating the steep loop trail, documenting the jagged rocks and the bottomless canyon below. But as the photos progressed, they grew unsettling. One photo showed he had wandered deep into the thick forest, capturing a massive, uprooted tree. Another showed what looked like a giant footprint. Subsequent photos depicted swampy terrain and a running stream, indicating Dale was desperately hiking miles off trail, likely trying to follow water to survive. Then came the final photo, time-stamped at 7:30 p.m. The light was fading. In the frame, standing directly in front of Dale in the shadows of the trees, was a dark, towering humanoid figure. Though blurry, a hairy, ape-like creature could be made out in the dim light. Even more terrifying were 2 short video clips discovered on the memory card, clips that seemed to document the final desperate moments of Dale's ordeal. The first video showed him wandering along a dark, heavily wooded path, the camera shaking as he struggled to find his way. The forest around him was unnaturally still, the trees forming a suffocating canopy overhead. In the background, an eerie, overlapping whistling sound echoed through the trees, rising and falling in strange, almost coordinated patterns. It didn't resemble wind or any known animal call. It sounded deliberate, as if something unseen was signaling from the shadows. In the second video, the situation escalated into something far more disturbing. Dale appeared increasingly panicked, breathing hard as he turned the camera over his shoulder. For a split second, he accidentally captured a dark, humanoid figure moving between the trees, keeping pace with him. The creature's outline was tall and unnaturally thin, its movements quick and deliberate. Moments later, it hurled a large rock in his direction. The stone crashed into the nearby stream with a violent splash, narrowly missing him. Dale's startled shout cut through the footage before the clip abruptly ended. Theories and speculations police quickly ruled out foul play. The area where Dale's remains were found was a restricted archaeological zone. The hiker who discovered the bones had been trespassing, which is why they chose to remain anonymous. Furthermore, Dale's phone and personal belongings had not been stolen. The official law enforcement theory posits that Dale slipped on the rugged terrain. Because he had undergone multiple back surgeries, he walked with a hunched posture and an awkward gait. Navigating an unforgiving wilderness alone would be incredibly dangerous for an older man with mobility issues. Police believe that after losing cell service, Dale tried to follow a low-lying waterway, but wandered deep into an uncharted primeval forest. The photos were likely taken as an attempt to track his location between his disappearance at 4:30 p.m. and the timestamp on his final photograph at 7:30 p.m. Dale had been moving for roughly 3 continuous hours. During that time, he covered an astonishing 6 miles, approximately 9.6 kilometers, across unforgiving mountain terrain. The route to Montezuma Valley was anything but gentle. It consisted of steep elevation changes, loose rock, dense forest sections, and uneven ground that would challenge even experienced hikers in full daylight. For someone already disoriented and possibly injured, that pace and distance are difficult to comprehend. It suggests either sheer desperation or a frantic attempt to escape whatever he believed was behind him. As for the cause of death, speculation has never ceased. Some investigators and locals believe he ultimately succumbed to exposure, dehydration, and starvation after becoming lost and physically depleted. Mountain weather can shift rapidly. In nighttime, temperatures in higher elevations drop sharply, increasing the risk of hypothermia. Others suspect a darker possibility, that Dale was stalked by a wild predator and attacked after collapsing from exhaustion. In such remote wilderness areas, scavenging animals can quickly obscure evidence. Despite these competing theories, no definitive forensic conclusion was ever reached, leaving the circumstances of his death unresolved and deeply unsettling. However, renowned cryptozoologist and biologist Dr. Elizabeth Sharper proposed a much more shocking theory. Dale's death was directly linked to Colorado's legendary rock apes. For a long time, it was believed only chimpanzees could mimic human whistling, Dr. Sharper explained. But numerous sighting reports suggest that Bigfoot-like creatures will whistle before throwing rocks as a threat and a warning. This spontaneous whistling in a natural environment sets them apart from known primates. Dr. Sharper further linked this to recent sightings, such as an incident on October 8, 2023, when passengers on the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad spotted a brown Sasquatch walking on a hillside. The creature suddenly crouched down and seemingly vanished, blending perfectly into the environment. The ancestral Puebloans described these creatures as having the ability to turn invisible. This is likely an extreme form of camouflage, Sharper noted. He argued that while ancient myths often amplify reality through symbolism, they tend to preserve a core observation. In this case, he suggested the legends may reflect the creature's extraordinary situational awareness and environmental adaptation. According to Sharper, hypervigilance, an almost preternatural sensitivity to movement, sound, and human presence, could allow such a being to evade detection so consistently that witnesses interpret the disappearance as literal invisibility. Some theorists take the idea even further, aligning the Puebloan belief in interdimensional travel with modern fringe hypotheses about anomalous phenomena. They draw comparisons to certain UFO reports, in which objects appear to vanish instantly, allegedly by shifting vibrational frequency or manipulating electromagnetic fields. Extending that analogy, proponents speculate these creatures might generate localized magnetic distortions or possess biological mechanisms beyond current scientific classification. Such mechanisms, they argue, could interfere with human sensory processing, bending light, altering perception, or exploiting neurological blind spots, so that observers quite literally cannot register their presence. While no empirical evidence substantiates these claims, the convergence of folklore, witness testimony, and speculative physics continues to fuel debate. A heartbreaking conclusion. Regardless of whether he encountered the supernatural or the brutal reality of nature, Dale's story ends in tragedy. He was always the one to solve tough problems and put our family at ease, his sister recalled. He was always helping neighbors mow their lawns or fix their gardens. Despite his physical pains, Dale was an incredibly tough man. It is believed that Dale purposely avoided calling his wife too many times so as not to cause her panic, trusting his own resilience to find a way out of the woods. But ultimately, human willpower could not conquer the unforgiving wilderness. According to the National Park Service, much of Mesa Verde outside the main roads remains totally untamed, with many areas strictly off limits. The most heartbreaking piece of evidence came when police recovered one final unsent text message drafted on Dale's phone. When his family read it, they broke down in tears. It simply read, "Don't look for me. I might not make it back. Take care of the family." Hello everyone. Today's story is truly extraordinary. As I organize the details and analyze everything, it helps me clear my mind. At the same time, I can't help but feel compassion for those involved. After completing each section, I like to pause and imagine myself in the victim's shoes, considering what I would do next if I were in their position. I've encountered many unusual stories about Bigfoot, but this one genuinely gave me chills. So on the morning of September 2nd, 2010, Jonathan Jett, age 34, along with his 25-year-old girlfriend Rachel Bagner, set out for a trip to the mountains near Pemberton in British Columbia, Canada. Their plan was a 3-day adventure through the wilderness, starting at Mount Mateel and covering about 26 kilometers to Valentine Lake. After their excursion, Rachel intended to volunteer at a children's welfare center, while Jonathan was expected to head back to the United States. However, After they entered Mount Mateel on September 4th, they vanished without a trace. Authorities later discovered their Toyota sedan, which contained Jonathan's phone and camera. Records showed they had stayed overnight at a hotel in Pemberton on September 3rd. Early on September 4th, around 7:45 in the morning, they left for their camping spot. Once there, Jonathan parked the car along a forest trail at the base of Mount Mateel, about 1.2 kilometers from a nearby service station. From that point, it would have taken approximately 5 hours of hiking to reach the mountain's summit. Rachel's sister, Elizabeth, became concerned when she didn't hear from Rachel that evening, which was uncharacteristic. She tried calling her sister, but received no response. By September 6th, Elizabeth reported Rachel missing to the police, prompting an immediate search. The investigators quickly found Jonathan's car parked on a small trail at the mountain's foot. Inside the vehicle, they retrieved Jonathan's phone and camera, but no sign of the couple. The phone records revealed no calls after the morning of September 4th. Although there were some work-related messages, they did not assist in solving the case. Next, investigators examined the footage from the camera. It contained numerous nature photographs, but 2 images stood out. One depicted a damaged tree, raising more questions than answers and deepening the mystery. Another photo, taken from afar, showed a bear that seemed to be following them. Additionally, 2 video clips were discovered on the camera. The first was recorded on the night of September 3rd at the hotel in Pemberton. In this footage, a humanoid figure appears near the window, lingering for several minutes before attempting to open it. The creature's features are hard to identify, but it appears to have unusually large hands. The hotel owner later confirmed this and provided another video showing Jonathan calling the police. She stated that when authorities arrived, no suspicious individuals or wild animals could be found.
I was informed that you will likely be making entries back to where you saw them.
Due to the remote location, only Jonathan and Rachel stayed at the inn that night. Interestingly, 12 years later, in 2022, the innkeeper also disappeared and remains missing. Regarding the second video, more details will be revealed later. On September 6th, the search efforts commenced, involving 3 helicopters conducting over 50 flights over Mount Martel and nearby valleys. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, along with volunteers, searched forests, valleys, and caves, but found no trace of Jonathan or Rachel. The official search concluded in October of that year. Later, a hat thought to belong to Rachel was found, but was eventually identified as belonging to another hiker. During the search, some suspicious humanoid footprints were discovered. RCMP officer Steve Clare speculated that the couple might have become lost and trapped somewhere on the mountain. The weather around Mount Martel in September is humid, with frequent thick fog that hampers rescue efforts. Volunteers often slipped while climbing. The couple was experienced in hiking. Jonathan went climbing weekly and held a certification, while Rachel had been hiking since childhood with her parents. The park manager noted that the mountain rarely sees visitors, especially at night when temperatures drop sharply and fog is common. The terrain is easy to get lost in, especially for inexperienced hikers. Despite a 10-day search involving over 2,000 hours, no evidence of Jonathan or Rachel was uncovered. Later, their families hired professional mountaineers to continue the search, suspecting they may have fallen off a cliff into a crevasse, but no results were found. Mount Martel, situated in Joffre Lakes Provincial Park, stands at 2,783 meters and features rolling alpine meadows and dense, largely undeveloped forests that can easily disorient hikers. Visitors usually climb during the day and descend before night to avoid cold and dangerous conditions. Climbing gear such as ropes, crampons, and ice axes are essential. According to their purchase records, Jonathan and Rachel planned to camp overnight. Jonathan bought a light green 2-person tent, while Rachel purchased 2 blue down sleeping bags, along with canned food, steak, a folding knife, and bear spray. Based on available information, several main theories about the case include: 1. Animal attack. Some suggest the couple was attacked by wildlife. However, this is unlikely since Mount Martel is home to black bears and cougars, but attacks are rare. In the past 5 years, only 3 animal attacks have been reported in British Columbia, and no one has been killed by a bear in the park's history. Black bears tend to be indifferent to humans, and even if an attack occurred, the couple had bear spray and a knife, making it improbable they were both killed by animals. Jonathan, who was tall and physically fit, was well versed in outdoor survival, likely knowing how to handle wildlife encounters. 2. Getting lost or falling. Another possibility is that they became lost or accidentally fell into a valley. While plausible, there's little evidence supporting this. Their camera and phone were found in their car, with the latest photos dated September 4th, indicating they had reached their destination, explored, and then returned to the vehicle before disappearing again. It was unusual for experienced hikers to leave behind such essential items like their camera and phone, suggesting they may have left suddenly under unexpected circumstances. Bigfoot encounter. The third theory suggests that the couple was attacked by Bigfoot. This idea arises from another video discovered on their camera. In it, the couple is seen venturing deep into the remote forest. As they scan their surroundings, Jonathan appears to realize they are being watched by an unknown creature. The sounds of branches cracking and an unfamiliar whistling follow their movements. When the camera shifts, Jonathan spots a large, dark figure staring directly at him. Although it remains still, its broad and formidable build is unmistakable. Bigfoot researcher Tom Powell once stated that Bigfoot will always notice you before you notice it. In regions where Bigfoot sightings are common, birds tend to be unusually active, as if they're warning each other of impending danger. If humans linger, Bigfoot might use intimidation tactics like whistling, breaking branches, or throwing rocks to scare them away. In extreme cases, it could attack if someone mistakenly intrudes on its territory, which is highly dangerous. Another clue comes from Kavit, a seasoned tracker on the search team. While guiding a rescue dog through the forest, the dog suddenly trembled and refused to move forward, indicating it sensed danger nearby. This detail adds to the theory. The footage from Jonathan's camera might not be directly linked, as the figure in the first video could have been a vagrant or thief, while the events in the second might be connected to their disappearance. Historically, if Bigfoot targets someone, it tends to shadow them down the mountain. Bigfoot is believed to live in groups, so Jonathan and Rachel might have been surrounded. If they panicked and got separated, the situation could have turned deadly. The last recorded stomp on Jonathan's camera was on September 4th. When police found their Toyota, his camera and phone were still inside. This suggests Jonathan returned to the vehicle at some point, but questions remain. Why did he leave the items in the car and then go back? Why didn't they just drive away immediately? One theory is that they became separated while fleeing downhill. Jonathan might have reached the car first, hurriedly unloaded some belongings, and then realized Rachel was missing. Panicked, he might have gone back to search for her and then disappeared into the mist. However, this remains speculation. The mystery surrounding Jonathan and Rachel's disappearance has yet to be solved. No clues, sightings, or remains have ever been found, as if they vanished into thin air. Their families, who knew Jonathan and Rachel were planning to marry soon after the trip, still hope for answers. Rachel, a medical student known for her kindness and compassion, volunteered in underprivileged communities in Colombia and enjoyed painting and playing piano. Jonathan was equally admirable, described by his family as honest and dependable. The trip was meant to be their pre-wedding honeymoon, but it turned into a tragic journey. 14 years later, their bodies might still be somewhere on the snowy peaks of Mount Mathia. Despite this, their families continued to post reward notices on social media, hoping for any useful leads. Many tell me to stop searching, but I cannot give up looking for my son, Jonathan's father said. I want him to come home, just like a soldier who died abroad. Parents always wish for their loved one's return, even if only their remains. On October 9th, 2022, a hiker stumbled upon a tragic scene in Colorado's Gunnison National Forest. 3 bodies near a campsite containing 2 tents filled with personal belongings and survival gear. The setup indicated an effort to live off the grid for an extended period. The deceased were identified as members of the Vance family: 42-year-old Rebecca Vance, 41-year-old Christine Vance, and their 14-year-old son, Talon Vance. The bodies had become mummified, preserved by the cold, as the snow had only recently begun to thaw. In July 2022, The Vance family chose to retreat into Colorado's Gunnison National Forest to live in isolation. Their decision stemmed from Bika Vance's growing disillusionment with society and distress over both personal and historical issues. They made extensive preparations for off-grid living, bringing books on farming and vegetable gardening, a fishing rod for protein, canned food, and basic cookware. However, their survival strategy was poorly planned. They set up camp far from any dependable water source and had limited tools for wilderness survival. When the bodies were eventually discovered, the grim condition told a harrowing story. Talon's body was found outside the tent with multiple fractures. Half of his face appeared to have been eaten, likely by scavengers. His tongue was missing and his skin had turned black and leathery from exposure. He wore a black shirt and gray pants but had no shoes or socks. Rebecca's body was discovered at the base of a pine tree, her face frozen in a look of terror. Like Talon, she was barefoot and missing socks. Part of her internal organs were exposed, and her eyes remained open. Christine was found inside one of the tents, wrapped in a sleeping bag with her hands clasped in prayer and wearing a cross necklace. Unlike the others, her body showed no visible trauma, suggesting she may have died quietly, likely from starvation or exposure. The scene around the campsite painted a grim picture. Used tissues and human waste were scattered nearby, while the family's 8-by-8-foot green tent remained standing amidst the devastation. The Vance family's decision to settle in such a remote location, combined with inadequate survival gear, likely played a major role in their tragic fate. Their story underscores the harsh realities of wilderness survival, especially when lacking proper preparation. It serves as a stark warning about the dangers of attempting to live in isolation within such unforgiving conditions. Just a few feet from Rebecca's body, investigators discovered a clump of pitch-black fur. It didn't match Bika's or Christine's hair, as both had long hair of a different color. Authorities never publicly released any findings or analysis related to the mysterious fur. For those of you who followed my videos, you know how crucial it is to stay alert and agile in the wilderness. If you're being followed, possibly by something large, you need to be able to move fast or risk a potential attack. Just north of the tents, investigators found a small makeshift shelter built from branches and logs. Inside were some scattered supplies, likely stashed there by the family. The main campsite included 2 tents. Based on their arrangement, it appears Bika shared one with her son, while Christine occupied the other. Despite the discoveries, the exact cause of the family's death remains uncertain. The official report labeled it an accident, but online discussions have proposed 3 main theories. The first suggests they succumbed to hypothermia and malnutrition. The large amount of human waste found around the site hints at possible parasite infections or severe gastrointestinal illness, which could have caused dehydration and rapid physical decline. It's also likely they simply didn't have enough food to endure the harsh winter of 2022. Snowfall that year was intense, reaching several feet deep. Although some canned food was recovered, it wouldn't have been enough to sustain them over the long term. They would have needed to supplement it with additional food sources to survive. Interestingly, the nylon tents were still upright, suggesting that someone remained alive long enough to regularly clear off the snow and prevent them from collapsing. This detail supports the idea that the family survived for a while into the winter, but it also raises a critical question. Why didn't they leave? They had arrived by car and likely had the opportunity to escape if their supplies were running low. Moreover, this theory doesn't explain why Talon's body had multiple fractures, or why Bika's abdomen was torn open. The second theory proposes that they were attacked by wild animals. Gunnison National Forest, located in western Colorado, is a popular destination for backpackers and hikers, and is home to elk, deer, and bears. It's possible that stored food at the campsite attracted a bear fattening up before hibernation. Given that both Bika and Talon were found without shoes or socks, they may have fled their tent in a panic during an attack. But here's where the theory falls apart. Neither of their bodies showed signs of extensive consumption. Wildlife experts note that if a bear had truly attacked, it likely would have eaten a significant portion of the remains. Additionally, no weapons, such as rifles or bows, were found at the campsite, indicating the family had no means of defending themselves. The exact events that led to the Vance family's deaths remain a mystery. A third theory suggests they may have died from carbon monoxide poisoning or food poisoning. Investigators noted smoke stains on the roof of one tent, suggesting that cooking may have taken place inside at some point. However, forensic tests did not detect any harmful levels of carbon monoxide in their bodies, nor were any toxic substances found in their fluids. Online, various alternative theories have emerged, many centered around a few unresolved questions. Talon's fractures. How did Talon suffer multiple broken bones? If he was attacked by an animal, why wasn't he consumed? While the missing portion of his face and tongue might be explained by birds or small scavengers, the origin of his injuries remains unexplained. Bika's torn abdomen. What caused the damage to her stomach? While predators like bears or wolves often go for soft tissue, her internal organs were mostly untouched, and given how remote the site was, authorities found no evidence of foul play or any mention of murder in their official report. The clump of black hair found near Rebecca's body. This thick, pitch black hair didn't match the hair of Bika or Christine, both of whom still had their long hair intact. While some speculated it could be from a bear, its texture and length didn't quite match typical bear fur. Despite all the theories, the Vance family's final days remained cloaked in uncertainty. These lingering mysteries only fueled more extreme and speculative theories. Some individuals began sharing eerie personal experiences from the Gunnison campsite, with one claim gaining particular attention: the suggestion that the Vance family may have been killed by Bigfoot. In one video recorded in October, a camper captured massive footprints in the snow, far larger than any humans. Moments later, the air was filled with a deep, guttural roar, loud, sustained, and unlike any known animal. Another video filmed a few miles away near a creek also revealed unusually large footprints, again well beyond the size of a human's. These unsettling discoveries led some to a chilling theory that the Vance family may have fallen victim to an encounter with Bigfoot. Some theorists have attempted to reconstruct what might have happened in the final days of the Vance family. As winter neared, they began stockpiling food to survive, but in doing so, they may have unknowingly disturbed the territory of a creature like Bigfoot. A being of such enormous size would require a vast amount of resources to sustain itself, and the Vance's presence could have disrupted that balance. Another theory suggests that the scent of their canned goods might have drawn the creature in, ultimately triggering a violent encounter, whether the cause was environmental, animal-related, or something far more sinister. The truth remains as elusive as the forest itself. Some believe Bigfoot attacked Talon and Bika one by one, while Christine, who had been sleeping in a separate tent, may have briefly escaped. As for the mysterious clump of black hair found near the bodies, it was never formally analyzed, but an unrelated case online might offer insight. A report published on the environmental science website Mongabay brought renewed attention to one of the most controversial and enduring mysteries in North American folklore: Bigfoot. The article focused on a supposed Bigfoot hair sample that had undergone a series of DNA analyses. The results, according to researchers involved in the study, were nothing short of astonishing. The mitochondrial DNA, the part of our genetic material passed down exclusively through the maternal line, was found to be entirely human, suggesting that the maternal ancestor of this creature was indeed a modern human woman. However, it was the nuclear DNA, which contains genetic material inherited from both parents, that presented the most perplexing results. The nuclear DNA showed a baffling combination: a recognizable human genome interlaced with sequences that bore no resemblance to anything currently cataloged in the primate family. According to the researchers who analyzed the sample, this could suggest an ancient hybridization event, one where a human female might have produced offspring with an unidentified primate species, one unknown to modern science. The implications of such a discovery are staggering, potentially pointing to a parallel lineage of hominins that coexisted with early humans but remained hidden, either by isolation or sheer luck, deep in remote forests or mountains. Even more fascinating were certain genomic features that defied existing biological frameworks. The DNA reportedly shared key characteristics with a specific chromosome in modern humans, yet included extensive sequences that have never been recorded, neither in present-day Homo sapiens nor in any catalog of ancient hominins, like Neanderthals or Denisovans, nor in any known non-human primate. In other words, these sequences were completely foreign, as if they originated from a branch of the evolutionary tree that had been entirely lost to time. Researchers estimated the mitochondrial DNA to be over 13,000 years old, placing the creature's lineage in the late Pleistocene era, a time when early humans, megafauna, and now possibly these unknown primate hybrids roamed the earth together. Despite the groundbreaking nature of these claims, the broader scientific community responded with overwhelming skepticism. Critics argued that the results could be due to contamination, flawed testing methods, or misinterpretation of the data. Others suggested the findings bordered on pseudoscience, given the lack of peer-reviewed validation. Yet if these findings were proven valid, they would not only rewrite human evolutionary history, but also force scientists to rethink the boundaries of biology, taxonomy, and even the very definition of what it means to be human. The report's publication coincided with another unsettling story that captured the public's attention. In the days following the discovery of a young boy's body in a remote mountainous area, authorities received a call from a man who claimed to be the child's father. Emotionally shattered, he explained that over a year earlier, his former partner, a woman named Bika, had informed him of her intentions to take their son, Talon, to live in isolation, far from the reaches of society. That was in August 2022. Since then, he had not heard a single word from her. His repeated attempts to contact her via phone calls, text messages, and emails had gone unanswered. When Talon's body was eventually recovered by search teams, his condition shocked even the most seasoned professionals. He weighed only about 20 kilograms, far below the average for his age, strong evidence of chronic malnutrition and long-term neglect. Among his few personal belongings was a diary, likely his only outlet during the long, harrowing months of solitude. The pages were filled with childlike scrawl, expressing his hunger, confusion, and fear. One heartbreaking entry read simply, "I don't know why we're still here. I think she's gone crazy. I miss Dad. I just want to go home." This tragic case, paired with the bizarre findings of the Bigfoot DNA report, stirred public imagination and debate. For some, the two stories symbolize very different aspects of human nature, our capacity for mystery and wonder, as well as our ability for self-destruction and sorrow. I'm happy living with Mom, but we're about to move to a place no one knows about. No one knows what's ahead. I don't want to leave my family and friends, but I don't have a choice. On August 18, 2019, search and rescue personnel scoured Thompson Peak in California. While combing through a concealed trail, they stumbled upon a blue backpack, identified as belonging to Daniel Comins. 1 week later, approximately 6 kilometers away from that spot, a ground search team made a chilling discovery near a ravine: fractured human vertebrae and a shattered pelvis. A cell phone was also recovered near the remains. When investigators accessed the contents of the phone, a disturbing narrative began to emerge. It seemed Daniel had captured evidence of something deeply unsettling, suggesting he may have inadvertently stumbled into what appeared to be Bigfoot's lair. One particular photo on the camera added to the growing sense of horror. Daniel Comins stood 1.75 meters, is approximately 5 feet 9 inches, and 75 kilograms, is about 165 pounds. He was born on April 12, 1985, in La Mesa, California, and spent his childhood and teenage years in Lancaster. He later graduated from the University of California, Santa Barbara. From a young age, Daniel had been obsessed with cryptids, particularly Sasquatch, and had a deep fascination with mysterious creatures. His favorite pastime as a child was sitting in front of the television, watching the Nature and Discovery channels. As an adult, Daniel became a certified emergency medical technician and served with the Blue Lake Volunteer Fire Department. Known for his infectious smile and sharp sense of humor, Daniel was an experienced backpacker and cycling enthusiast. Several months before his disappearance, he had requested a sabbatical, saying he planned to hike in the Alps. According to South Lake Volunteer Fire Department Chief Reisbag, on the morning of August 11th, 2019, Daniel posted a series of photos on Facebook. The caption read, "Just reached Thompson Peak, 9,000 feet up, enjoying a cold beer." He mentioned meeting 4 hikers from the San Francisco Bay Area and helping them reach the summit. In the photo, Daniel wears a sun hat and blue jacket, smiling and sharing snacks with others. Following his usual habit, Daniel meticulously planned his route. Shortly after that post, he called his girlfriend, Callie, assuring her he was safe and that Sapphire Lake was his next stop. That night, she received a message from his GPS device indicating he had reached the area near the lake. August 14th was the day Daniel was supposed to return home, but Callie never saw him again. When she couldn't reach him by phone, she reported his disappearance to the Trinity County Sheriff's Office. That same evening, Daniel's vehicle was found parked at the entrance of a trail leading into the mountains. By August 18th, 12 separate search and rescue teams were combing the area. A helicopter from the California Highway Patrol spotted a blue backpack lying off the main trail. It was confirmed to belong to Daniel. However, Daniel himself was still missing. The search continued until August 26, when a breakthrough occurred. A ground team near Sapphire Lake found human skeletal remains in a dense thicket, 2 fractured vertebrae, a shattered pelvis, and bones still bearing muscle tissue, and traces of blood. Forensic analysis suggested Daniel died sometime between the evening of August 11th and the early morning of August 12th. One initial theory posited that Daniel may have fallen from a cliff and been partially consumed by wild animals.
And the vast distance between the backpack and the remains only deepened the mystery. Moreover, aside from a few bones and the cell phone, no other remains were found. No clothing fragments. No other body parts. If an animal had indeed scavenged the body, more evidence should have remained. Then came the phone's photo gallery, perhaps the most compelling clue. In addition to selfies and scenic shots, there were a few inexplicable images. They depicted what looked like an unknown den deep in the wilderness. Massive, uprooted trees, collapsed branches, and a damp, eerie environment. In one particularly chilling image, a hulking, brown-furred creature appeared partially obscured behind a tree. In front of it lay Daniel's backpack, seemingly discarded. Daniel's death was deeply unsettling, and the circumstances surrounding it remain unexplained. Why did he leave the main trail? What drew him to such an ominous place? How could a trained firefighter, fit and prepared, end up reduced to a handful of bones in a matter of hours? Another clue surfaced weeks later. On September 5th, a hiker named Jerry Brennan contacted the local Forest Service with a disturbing report. He claimed that on August 11th, the same day Daniel disappeared, he had been camping near South Lake when he felt watched. While preparing lunch, Jerry heard distant, human-like screams echoing through the forest. Following the noise, he reached a deep ravine. He recorded a short video at the scene. In the footage, Jerry recounts the sudden silence that followed the screams, and then, through the trees, he claims to have seen a massive humanoid creature watching him. Though far away, he was certain it was at least twice his size. The encounter lasted only seconds, but Jerry said it felt like a lifetime. He fled in panic, rolling and crawling to safety. As he left, he believed the creature let out another warning growl.
It's fucking moving. That is fucking moving right there.
There was something strange about the figure Jerry Brennan claimed to have seen. It didn't move like any ordinary animal. It resembled an ape, but it was bulkier, more powerful, and walked with a deliberate presence. Jerry was sure it wasn't any known animal. Even as he stood inside the Park Service office, Jerry's body was still trembling. But when he reported this vital clue to the Forest Service, he was told he'd likely just seen a black bear standing upright. Authorities remained vague about Daniel Cummins' case. The most recent official reports simply state that he died of unknown causes, but online discussions and whispers suggest a much darker truth. According to Daniel's family, the reason he may have gotten lost was his willingness to help others, particularly a group of inexperienced hikers. After Daniel's death, a man named Robert Brand contacted Callie, Daniel's girlfriend. He claimed Daniel had assisted their team of 4 hikers while climbing that same mountain. On August 11th, Robert's group had gotten lost en route to the summit of Thompson Peak. That's when they encountered Daniel. After speaking with them, Daniel volunteered to guide the team to the top. They shared food and stories along the way. Daniel, who hadn't packed much for himself, gave away nearly all he had. Even on the descent, he continued scouting ahead to find a safe path. Robert described Daniel as incredibly generous, someone you could immediately trust, especially once they learned he was a firefighter. Before parting ways, Daniel mentioned his plan to head to Sapphire Lake, but said he'd have to take a back route due to his lack of food. When Robert's group offered to share some of theirs, Daniel politely declined, insisting that as beginners, they would need it more. From the available information, several chilling clues begin to form a picture. Northern California has long been a hotspot for Bigfoot sightings. According to Ranger Richard Destinger of California's Redwood National Park, the state has recorded over 458 Bigfoot sightings, second only to Washington. The iconic Red Mountain Bigfoot photo was also taken here. Despite occasional recognition of Bigfoot as folklore, like California's Bill 666, which proposed Bigfoot as the state's official mystery creature and cultural symbol, official agencies have consistently denied any concrete evidence of its existence. Incidents involving violent encounters or disappearances are rarely acknowledged. Jerry Brennan's terrifying account may hold the final piece in the unsettling puzzle surrounding the mysterious death of Daniel Kermis. While camping near South Lake on the night of August 11th, Jerry claimed to have heard what sounded like a human scream echoing through the trees, raw, high-pitched, and panicked. Moments later, he saw a massive bipedal figure watching him from the shadows. But what he saw didn't align with the images retrieved from Daniel's phone days later. This discrepancy has led some to a deeply chilling theory. Daniel wasn't killed by a single creature, but by multiple, possibly by a group, a family. The figure Jerry described was tall and imposing, with pitch black hair and a wide chest. In contrast, the being captured in Daniel's photos, taken shortly before his death, had lighter, reddish fur and appeared smaller in build, though no less intimidating. For researchers in the field of cryptozoology, these differences weren't contradictions, they were clues. Some experts suggest that juvenile Bigfoots may have light, reddish fur, which darkens as they age. Just as a bear cub's coat might be golden and turn dark with maturity, the same may apply to these elusive creatures. If true, it supports a frightening scenario. Daniel may have stumbled into a nesting ground, a den, or a hidden sanctuary inhabited not by a single creature, but by an entire Bigfoot family. The idea isn't far-fetched when compared to other reported encounters in Northern California and the Pacific Northwest, regions long steeped in Bigfoot lore. Witnesses have often described seeing multiple creatures traveling together, an adult and one or two smaller figures nearby. These reports were dismissed for decades, but Daniel's disappearance may suggest there was truth in them all along. Earlier that same day, August 11th, Daniel had crossed paths with a group of 4 lost hikers while making his way along the Thompson Peak Trail. That detour may have sealed his fate. Sometime between leaving the group and nightfall, Daniel likely strayed off the main trail, possibly unknowingly venturing into a restricted part of the forest, untouched and wild. It's speculated he realized too late that something was watching him. Some theorize Daniel dropped his backpack deliberately. For seasoned climbers and wilderness responders, this is a known tactic. Leave gear behind to distract a predator. It's also possible he left it behind to draw whatever was following him into view, so he could photograph it, and he did. His phone later revealed a series of eerie images. An uprooted tree, claw marks in the earth, and in one final photo, a hulking shape lurking behind a thick tree trunk. A shape not human, not known, not safe. Daniel may have tried to run, camera in hand, as the forest around him erupted with low-frequency howls and movement. At some point, those howls grew louder, more coordinated, as if multiple beings were converging. The noise might have masked Daniel's footsteps or his final plea for help. But Jerry Brennan heard something that night. A scream, sudden, agonized, human, then silence. To this day, only parts of Daniel's remains have been found. His fractured vertebrae and shattered pelvis were discovered weeks later, far from where his backpack had been located. The rest of his body is still missing. Whether lost to the forest or hidden by something that didn't want to be found is a question that continues to haunt everyone who has followed the case. And for those who believe in the existence of Bigfoot, the answer may be far darker than anyone is willing to admit. What happened next is anyone's guess. The rest of Daniel's remains could still be hidden in that lair. Daniel Comins was a kind, selfless man. In life, he dedicated himself to helping others, both in his career and in the wild. After his passing, the Blue Lake Volunteer Fire Department paid tribute to his memory. His chief, Rice Bago, spoke with sadness and pride. It's hard to accept, but what we can do now is carry Daniel's legacy forward. Live well, help others. That's what he would have wanted. No one can say for certain what really happened in those remote woods, but the clues left behind, photos, screams, sightings, hint at something far stranger than a hiking accident. They suggest that Daniel Comins didn't just vanish, he may have crossed paths with something not meant to be found. On April 27, 2007, a search and rescue team located the remains of Corey Colley in Beltrami Forest after an extensive 6-month search. The discovery was deeply disturbing. Mr. Cayley's body appeared to have been bisected, with his upper torso missing and his lower extremities in an advanced state of decomposition. Scattered nearby were bleached bones, indicating prolonged exposure to the elements. Initial findings suggested a violent dismemberment prior to death. However, the case took on an even more perplexing nature due to the discovery of unsettling photographs on Mr. Cayley's camera. Let's go back to October 16, 2006. Corey, 38 years old, and his friend James Freed planned a hunting trip to Minnesota's Beltrami Forest. If you go 16 miles further north from the forest, you'd reach Lake of the Woods, America's 6th largest freshwater lake, right at the Canadian border. This area is a maze of lakes and peat bogs. The terrain is so rugged and swampy that even experienced hunters can get lost. Corey and James brought everything they needed for the trip, including James's yellow hunting dog. The forest had its share of white-tailed deer and moose, but most hunters came here for grouse. Beltrami is Minnesota's 2nd largest forest, full of rivers and interwoven lakes. To keep people safe, park officials had put up warning signs, telling hunters to avoid nighttime activities. That afternoon, around 4 p.m., Corey and James set up camp and decided to split up to cover more ground. They agreed to meet back at the campsite at 6:30 p.m. James made it back on time, but Corey didn't. When Corey finally stumbled out of the woods an hour later, he was sweating and looked rattled. He told James he'd gotten lost and asked, "Did you smell that awful stench while you were out there?" James shrugged it off, saying it was probably a dead grouse or maybe even a moose. Neither of them had any luck hunting that day, and James suddenly remembered his car was low on gas. He told Corey to stay put while he drove to town to refuel. "Don't wander off," James said before leaving. As James got in his car, he noticed a grouse just a few dozen feet away. Corey was already chasing after it as James drove off. Upon returning to their campsite at 9 p.m., James discovered it deserted and shrouded in darkness. Despite calling out for his companion Corey, there was no response. After an agonizing wait until 11 p.m., James initiated a search, retracing their earlier route. His efforts, however, proved fruitless, leading him to fear the worst. Distressed and seeking assistance, James encountered 2 unfamiliar individuals in the dense woodland. Although he couldn't discern their facial features due to the darkness, a pungent odor emanated from them. Their lack of firearms struck James as unusual given the hunting environment. They advised him to contact law enforcement immediately. Subsequently, James cooperated with an interview conducted by the Beltrami County Sheriff's Department. He clarified that neither he nor Corey engaged in substance abuse, but acknowledged Corey's use of painkillers following a spinal injury sustained during a prior hunting expedition. Describing their friendship as recent but strong, formed through shared fishing trips, James emphasized Corey's cheerful and responsible nature. He recounted that Corey had been pursuing a grouse when last seen, and that his phone calls went directly to voicemail. On October 25th, Corey's family, along with hundreds of volunteers and several agencies, arrived at the site to help with the search. They set up a large staging area, and helicopters and ground teams scoured the forest. 2 miles north of Moose River, searchers found James's dog, Sammy. The dog had gone missing with Corey, and it seemed Corey had taken the dog when he left the camp. By the time Sammy was found, he was severely dehydrated and malnourished. Corey sent samples of the dog's stomach contents and feces to a lab, trying to determine if it had eaten human remains. The results came back negative. There were no traces of human tissue, only dirt and grass. During the search, crews found several of Corey's belongings: his hat, a pack of cigarettes, some bullets, a lighter, and a glove. They also came across strange footprints, some of which showed that Corey had been walking barefoot. There were signs of a campfire, but it wasn't clear if Corey had made it. The footprints and items suggested Corey had been heading southeast, following a flooded drainage ditch into the dense, swampy woods. Almost everything they found, his belongings, the footprints, formed a straight line along this path. The search continued until November, but worsening weather forced them to call it off. On April 27, 2007, after the snow had melted, Beltrami County resumed the search with the help of 5 K9 units. The helicopter spotted Corey's remains in a cold, swampy forest. His body was found lying in a marsh, with his legs submerged in water. Disturbingly, his body appeared to have been severed in half. The upper half was completely missing, while his legs had turned to bare bones, some scattered nearby. What puzzled search teams was that they had already combed this area during the initial search, but the dense grass had likely concealed the body. Aside from Corey's decayed lower half, his camera, shoes, and hunting rifle were never found. The autopsy revealed that Corey's bones had been gnawed on by animals. But here's the strange part. What kind of creature could tear his body in two like that? Sure, the Beltrami forest has some wolves and black bears, but neither of them could inflict this level of damage. And Corey had his rifle and plenty of ammunition. As a hunter, he knew how to protect himself. His shoes, they think, were probably the last thing he took off well before everything happened. All the evidence points to Corey getting lost in the woods. James told Corey, if you ever get lost, head west. And Corey had a compass. So why did he go the wrong way? I don't know why he made that choice, James said. At first, Corey dropped smaller items, almost like he was leaving a trail for someone to find him. For a while, he must have still been thinking clearly. That's what the police said. The search for Corey's body continued through the end of 2007. Then in 2009, a hunter found something 39 miles away from where Corey's body had initially been discovered. There was a shoe soaking in water. Next to it, a blue jacket and a camera. After testing, authorities confirmed that these items all belonged to Corey Kelly, the man who disappeared in 2006. Here's where it gets even stranger. If Corey had walked to that location, he would have had to go non-stop for 14 hours without eating or resting. However, Corey's body was found in a swamp in the middle of Beltrami Forest, while the shoe and jacket were located way south in the Heron Lake wildlife area. So how did his belongings end up there? Perhaps the camera held the answer. When the photos were recovered, investigators found that some were taken on October 16th, 2006, the day Corey went missing, while others were from the 17th. This means Corey survived for at least 2 nights out there. The photos were unsettling. Some depicted scenery, trees, streams, and the forest, while others showed deep woods, places that looked like lairs or nests. One photo captured huge, human-like footprints, and another showed a massive underground cave. The remaining images are difficult to interpret. While photographic evidence did not clarify the circumstances surrounding Corey Kelly's disappearance, authorities have proposed a more straightforward explanation. They suggest that Mr. Kelly perished from hypothermia, and his remains were subsequently scavenged by animals. This determination classifies the case as an accidental death resulting from unforeseen events. Nevertheless, this conclusion is contested by some individuals. David Paulides, an investigator with the Missing 411 Project, which documents cases of unexplained disappearances, considers Corey Kelly's case a prime example of hunters vanishing under mysterious circumstances within national parks. Mr. Paulides posits that these individuals may be observed and targeted by an unidentified entity. In the instance of the Beltrami Forest, he suspects this entity to be a swamp ape, also known as the skunk ape, a creature akin to Bigfoot, but inhabiting lowland swamps and emitting a pungent odor. Despite investigative efforts, the precise details surrounding Corey Kelly's disappearance may forever remain unknown. The swamp ape is typically characterized by reddish-brown fur, though reports of black-haired sightings exist. Standing at approximately 7 feet tall, it is smaller than its northern counterpart, Bigfoot. Some researchers theorize that the swamp ape might reside in subterranean caverns, or even underwater, rendering it extremely elusive. Its most distinctive trait is an overpowering foul odor, attributed to a scent gland, making its presence readily detectable. Since the incident, Corey's rifle has never been found. To honor his memory, the 39-mile trail running from central Beltrami Forest to Heron Lake is now called the Corey Kelly Trail. As for James, he has been consumed by guilt ever since. After Corey's death, he gave up hunting for good. Sometimes I think, he said, life has this strange way of flipping the script. Hunters go out there thinking they're in control, that they're the ones with the power, but in an instant, the hunter can become the hunted. The search for Corey Kelly was massive, involving 62 organizations in 2 countries working together, with 6,500 hours spent and hundreds of volunteers involved. Yet, even after more than a decade, Corey's case remains unsolved. His half-missing body, the cryptic photos on his camera, the rifle that vanished without a trace, and those two towering figures reeking of that nauseating stench. Who or what were they? After Corey's camera and creepy photos were discovered, which were much talked about in the neighborhood, new strange events began to occur in the Beltrami area. A couple of years later, two teenagers decided to repeat his route for the sake of thrills and put everything on the internet. They set off for the forest light, promising their friends to return by evening, but they never returned home. The next day, the police found their car at the entrance to Beltrami, but never the guys themselves. On the muddy road leading deep into the forest, the prints of huge feet were noticeable. They resembled human feet in shape, but they were too wide and deep, as if they had been left by someone weighing several hundred kilograms. Local hunters began to notice the oddities even before this incident. Many swore that at night a strange noise was coming from the swamps. Heavy breathing and harsh screams, similar to a mixture of a roaring deer and a distorted human voice. Those who dared to stay in the forest until dark described the same thing, a suffocating smell, as if from rotting meat or old decomposed animal carcasses. Some said that the smell appeared suddenly and disappeared just as quickly, as if its bearer was moving nearby, remaining invisible in the dark. The county sheriff tried to reassure residents, blaming everything on the activity of bears that allegedly migrated through the forest. But residents increasingly noticed something else. The forest seemed to be emptying. Beltrami has always been rich in wildlife, but in recent years there have been fewer deer, smaller animals have disappeared, and predators have avoided the swamps. It was as if the wild fauna itself sensed that something alien had settled in these places. In 2011, a new episode occurred, which only increased the fears. 30 miles to the south, a local fisherman came out onto the river before dark. According to him, the morning was quiet and foggy, and he was about to pull out his nets when he noticed movement on the opposite shore. A figure stood between the trees, huge, taller than any human, with broad shoulders and a massive silhouette. At first he thought it was a man in hunting clothes, but immediately he felt a sharp, disgusting smell, as if from decomposing meat. The figure stepped closer to the water, and then the fisherman realized that this was not a man. The creature moved toward him, breaking branches and making hoarse, low breathing. The man was seized with panic. He dropped the gear and ran, not understanding the road. According to him, heavy footsteps chased him for several tens of meters, until he jumped out into the clearing. Only there the noise died down. He returned home in a state of shock, and had to give up fishing. Later, he told the neighbors about the incident, but did not contact the police because he was afraid of ridicule. Nevertheless, the rumors spread quickly, and the locals took his story as another confirmation. Something lives in the forests of Beltrami, from which not only people, but also animals flee. Since then, the forest has been shrouded in notoriety. Tourists try to avoid it, and locals warn strangers, if you hear the smell of rot, turn back. It is whispered that Corey's death was just the beginning, and that the swamp forest in Beltrami no longer belongs to man. Something else rules here, and the one who has once inhaled its scent will never leave the forest alive. On September 15, 2012, 31-year-old outdoor enthusiast Thomas Siebold set out alone on an expedition into the gates of the Arctic National Park in Alaska. 2 months later, he mysteriously vanished. On November 11th, a search team discovered a damaged campsite halfway up a mountain within the park, believed to have belonged to Thomas. Among the wreckage, they found his torn jeans, a camera, a phone, and a diary. Strangely, Thomas's body was never recovered. Entries in the diary and photos from the camera suggested that he had been stalked and tormented by an unknown creature. Thomas Siebold, a seasoned survival instructor from Wisconsin, was well known for his extensive wilderness expertise. With years of rigorous survival training and a lifelong passion for exploring remote, untouched landscapes, Thomas had ventured across many of the world's major mountain ranges. He could craft shelters from snow, start fires using friction, hunt with handmade tools, and survive alone in sub-zero conditions as harsh as negative 25 degrees Fahrenheit for weeks at a time. Friends often said, if anyone can survive the most extreme environments, it's Thomas. He frequently shared reflections and insights from his journeys on social media. When in areas without internet access, He relied on his journal to document his thoughts and experiences. One of his most ambitious destinations was Gates of the Arctic National Park, a vast wilderness in northwest Alaska, entirely within the Arctic Circle and bordering the Arctic Ocean. Known as the Gates of the Arctic, this park is the largest national nature reserve in the United States and the second largest forest park in the world, covering 8.47 million acres, roughly the size of Belgium. Its ecosystem remains largely untouched, earning it the reputation of being at the edge of the world. The park is home to wildlife like caribou, grizzly bears, and even local legends of Bigfoot. On November 11th, 2012, a remote outpost in northwest Alaska received notice that Thomas had missed his scheduled return flight. Authorities quickly launched a search operation focused on the area where he was last known to be. The search lasted 13 days, but the extreme conditions and massive scale of the wilderness forced the operation to be suspended for the safety of the rescue teams. Despite Thomas's survival skills, officials believed he had likely become lost in the vast forest. Alaska's unpredictable weather and unforgiving terrain posed serious risks, and the chances of recovering his body were deemed low. Still, his family refused to give up hope. Eventually, through the combined efforts of park rangers and family members, a campsite believed to be Thomas's was discovered near Chandler Lake, west of the Brooks Range. At the site, searchers found a sleeping bag and fragments of torn denim, believed to be remnants of his jeans. Nearby, they also recovered a camera, a cell phone, and his journal. As investigators reviewed the photos and diary entries, a chilling picture began to emerge. Thomas had been following a planned route toward a remote village called Kobuk, nestled in the Brooks Range and home to just 148 residents. Isolated and difficult to reach, Kobuk was to be a checkpoint on his wilderness journey, but he never arrived. Thomas spent part of his expedition in a temporary shelter known as the Cyber House, a fully equipped survival base that allowed visitors to cook, rest, and live independently in the wilderness. In his journal, he recorded moments of peace and deep appreciation for Alaska's wild beauty. September 15th. The weather is perfect this morning. Words can't capture the indescribable beauty around me. Every cloud-covered peak, every stream, every bird, even the quick, elusive animals in the forest seem to call out to me. I feel like I belong here. September 20th. Tonight, under a full moon, the sun set with a fiery red glow over the icy landscape. Dinner was wonderful. Salmon, meat, and berries. Your love and support give me strength. The people of Alaska have been incredibly kind, even though we've only just met. These serene and reflective entries abruptly ended on September 28th, when something terrifying disrupted the calm. September 28th. A monster came to my campsite tonight. It kept banging on the door. At first, I thought it might be someone from a nearby village, but as I moved closer, I heard a howl, deep, unnatural, and horrifying. Whatever it was, it had immense strength. I felt like it could rip the cabin apart. I didn't know what to do. I hid inside all night, unable to sleep. Tomorrow morning, I'm leaving. Immediately. Following the terrifying encounter, Thomas's journal indicated he intended to travel 20 kilometers to Chandler Lake and establish a new camp there. His final journal entry, dated October 11th, hinted at growing fear and uncertainty. October 11th. I've been away from the village for several days now. My food supplies are limited, but they should last until I reach Chandler Lake. Still, something doesn't feel right. I have the unsettling feeling that I'm being followed. I don't know if it's a person or something else. At times, I hear howls, beast-like, but when I search, there's nothing there. I'm starting to feel uneasy. October 2nd, noon. I'm feeling increasingly unsettled. Deep in the forest, I came across enormous footprints, easily twice the size of my own. Nearby, I found crude shelters made from tree branches and signs of broken limbs. Were these the work of hunters? The strange, unsettling sound I've been hearing has returned, and I'm terrified. October 4th, morning. Today, I captured something remarkable and disturbing on my camera. In the distance, I spotted what at first seemed to be a bear standing upright and watching me. But it wasn't a bear. It looked more like a pitch-black humanoid figure. It was too far away to identify clearly whether man or beast, but I had the unnerving sense that it was following me. I think I need to pick up the pace and leave this area as quickly as possible. October 5th, night. Thomas finally reached the vicinity of Chandler Lake, but with daylight fading, he had no choice but to set up camp for the night. He noted in his journal that he had just enough sausage and steak left for one final meal. Hoping the mysterious creature was far behind him, he tried to settle in. At 10:30 p.m., however, he heard footsteps outside his tent. The oppressive feeling returned. "It's here again," he wrote. "The air feels heavy. I'm terrified. Can anyone save me?" Analysis of the diary and camera evidence. Based on Thomas's journal entries and footage recovered from his camera, it's highly likely that he encountered a creature resembling Bigfoot in the remote Alaskan wilderness. The first signs of trouble date back to September 15th, when Thomas arrived at the Brooks Range shelter. It's believed the scent of food he prepared there may have initially drawn the creature to his location. September 28th, night. A hungry Bigfoot is believed to have approached Thomas's cabin, likely drawn by the scent of food. The creature appeared to survey the area before attempting to break in. Realizing the imminent danger, Thomas chose to abandon the shelter the following morning. However, instead of returning to safety, he headed deeper into the wilderness, toward the more remote Chandler Lake. The reasons for this decision remain unclear. One possibility is that his scheduled return date had not yet arrived, leading him to stick to his original route. Another is that he may have mistaken the encounter for a bear attack and believed relocating would keep him safe. As he journeyed toward Chandler Lake, Thomas continued to be stalked. Bigfoot is often described in lore as a highly elusive creature, capable of silently observing humans long before they realize they're being watched. Thomas frequently reported hearing strange, untraceable sounds, heightening his fear and confusion. October 5th, night. While preparing his final meal, sausage and steak, the strong aroma may have triggered another encounter. This time, the creature is believed to have launched a direct attack on his campsite. Theories about Thomas's disappearance. One theory suggests that Thomas fell victim to a wild animal attack. Given the vast, untamed wilderness of Alaska and his thriving wildlife, it's plausible that he became disoriented and was attacked by a grizzly bear or mountain lion. These predators, particularly in times of food scarcity, are known to target campsites and humans. Despite extensive search efforts, Thomas's body has never been found, and his disappearance remains a haunting mystery. Another theory points to a more mysterious possibility, a Bigfoot encounter. Unlike bears, Bigfoot is said to remain active year-round, constantly foraging for food. This theory aligns closely with the evidence found in Thomas's recovered footage. First clip, September 28th, night. This video was captured during the same night Thomas described in his journal as being attacked. The recording contains howling sounds that don't match any known animal, such as bears or mountain lions. The creature appears to use its arms to strike and shake the makeshift shelter, suggesting humanoid strength and motion. Second clip, October 1st. In this footage, Thomas is seen deeper in the forest. Distant howls and heavy footsteps echo around him. He turns repeatedly with his camera, attempting to identify the source, but nothing visible appears in the frame. Together, these recordings support the chilling possibility that Thomas was being stalked, not by a known predator, but by something unknown and unnatural in the wilderness. One of the final videos recorded by Thomas revealed unsettling structures deep within the forest, formations made from stacked wooden stakes and branches, arranged in unnatural patterns. In several photos, a cave is visible on the edge of the woods. In one particularly eerie image, a shadowy humanoid figure, pitch black and still, appears to be staring directly at Thomas. The image is blurry when zoomed in, but its presence is unmistakable. He also captured photographs of enormous footprints scattered throughout the area. Alaska's vast and hauntingly beautiful wilderness has long drawn adventurers, hunters, and campers seeking solitude and challenge, but it's also notorious for unexplained disappearances. Every year, hundreds of people vanish in the state's forested national parks, many never found, leaving behind no trace. To some, venturing into such isolation may seem reckless, but for others, it reflects a deeply rooted human drive to explore the unknown. Tragically, that pursuit often ends in mystery, or worse. In his final diary entry, Thomas wrote, "The familiar howling has started again outside. This time, there's more than one of them. I feel so cold. I hope that once I fall asleep, I never wake up again. On September 21st, 2016, 74-year-old hiker Peter Jackson vanished under mysterious circumstances while on a filming trip to Yosemite National Park. A year later, on October 1st, 2017, a tourist exploring the area where Peter had disappeared stumbled upon what appeared to be his climbing cane and a shotgun. The firearm was still loaded, with 2 unfired rounds remaining in the chamber. This discovery prompted authorities to reopen the search for Peter. On October 23rd, search and rescue teams operating in the remote northwest region of Baliang Canyon, deep in untouched wilderness, discovered a fractured human skull. Forensic analysis confirmed it belonged to Peter Jackson, who had suffered a strong, concentrated blow to the head before his death. What made the case stranger was the fact that Peter's backpack and his remains had been found a year apart and 14 miles from each other, suggesting they had been deliberately moved to 2 separate locations. Even more unusual, Peter's death seemed to be connected to his quest to find a mysterious mountain creature. Peter Jackson was born in 1942 and had celebrated his 74th birthday just before his disappearance. In his youth, he worked for a construction company, and after retiring, he spent many years living in Mexico. His fascination with mountain monsters stemmed from a bizarre incident decades earlier. At the time, Peter had been struggling with personal and professional difficulties and decided to take a solo trip to Yosemite National Park. During that trip, he became lost. As darkness fell, he relied solely on his camera's light to navigate his way down the mountain. At one point, he heard heavy footsteps behind him. Panicked, Peter turned around and saw a massive human-like face staring at him. After a few tense seconds, the creature vanished into the night. This eerie footage, later kept on his computer, was shown by his son John, who believed his father had encountered the legendary Bigfoot. The incident left a lasting impression on Peter and fueled his determination to prove the creature's existence. In the years that followed, he ventured into Yosemite's wild backcountry many times but never obtained definitive evidence. Peter's obsession was met with skepticism and concern from his family. Over the years, he grew increasingly withdrawn and paranoid. His relatives suspected he might be suffering from mental illness and sometimes found him absorbed in religious texts. After retirement, Peter moved permanently to Mexico, seeking solitude and a quiet life. By September 2016, Peter planned to visit his son and sell his property in the area. He intended to return to Mexico by the end of October. On September 17th, he drove his Subaru into Yosemite National Forest and sent his last known text message to his son, saying he would camp for a few nights at White Wolf Canyon Campground and return on the 21st. John had assumed this was going to be nothing more than an ordinary camping trip, the kind they'd both taken before without incident, so he didn't think twice when Peter suggested it. But when the agreed-upon date finally came, Peter was nowhere to be found. Hours passed and repeated calls to his phone went unanswered. At first, John thought maybe there had been a delay or some miscommunication, but as the day wore on, unease set in. Concerned for his friend's safety, he contacted the local police, who soon referred the matter to the Yosemite Park authorities. When park rangers made their way to White Wolf Camp, the spot Peter had mentioned, they immediately located his car parked neatly in its designated space. Nearby stood his familiar filming tent, set up exactly as it should be. Everything appeared in order. The campsite itself was fully equipped. The cooking area was tidy, and the bear-proof container was stocked with a generous supply of food. Inside Peter's locked car, searchers found both his iPhone and tablet placed on the passenger seat, as if he had simply stepped away for a short walk. The vehicle showed no signs of damage or tampering, and the overall scene gave the impression of someone who had planned to return soon. However, something felt off. Peter's backpack, along with other essential gear such as his water supply and camera equipment and navigation tools, was missing. This suggested he had left the site on foot, taking only what he thought he might need for a brief outing. Not far from his designated campsite, the rangers came across another tent. It was small, plain in color, and oddly isolated. Inside, the sleeping bag was neatly rolled and clearly unused, and there were no traces of food, clothing, or personal items. The surrounding ground was undisturbed, No footprints, no campfire remains, no scattered belongings. It was as if the tent had been pitched purely for show, never lived in at all. The sight only deepened the mystery surrounding Peter's disappearance. Police conducted a brief interview with John, Peter's son. John explained that on September 17th, he had received a text from his father stating he was heading to Yosemite Park to film. He knew nothing about the exact equipment Peter was carrying. Park officials also checked wilderness permit records under Peter's name, but found no evidence he had secured the required permission to be in the area. A friend of Peter's, Michael, later provided investigators with more insight. He told them that the last time they spoke, also on September 17th, Peter mentioned entering Yosemite through the east entrance and intentionally avoiding busy campsites. Peter had explained that he wanted to go somewhere completely off the grid, where there was no cell signal. Michael described Peter's navigation skills as poor, and combined with his advanced age, worried he could easily get lost in the wilderness alone. Michael suggested they go together, but Peter declined. On September 29, 2016, search and rescue teams exploring the remote eastern area near White Wolf Campground came across a blue backpack. Documents and items inside confirmed it belonged to Peter. Not far away, they found a water bottle that appeared to have been bitten, visible teeth marks still indented in the plastic. Other than that, no significant clues were recovered. A year later, on October 1st, 2017, a mountaineer traveling through the same general area discovered a pair of trekking poles and a shotgun roughly 600 meters from Peter's last known campsite. The shotgun was rusted and damaged, but still held 2 unfired rounds. Investigators noted it had been discharged previously, suggesting the final 2 bullets were never used, possibly because trouble struck too quickly. On October 23rd, a 50-person search and rescue team returned to the area for a renewed effort. While camping in dense forest northwest of White Wolf, they found a human skull. Subsequent searches uncovered more remains, including a mandible, several broken ribs, and scraps of clothing scattered within a 100-foot radius. Peter's clothes had been completely shredded. Forensic analysis revealed the body had sustained significant damage from environmental exposure and wildlife activity, though the exact cause of death could not be determined. Crucially, there was no evidence of murder. In such an isolated and rugged region, few, if any, humans could have inflicted the kind of damage found. Despite the years that had passed, debate over Peter's fate persisted. One theory suggested he had simply become lost or taken his own life. Peter's former colleague, Alan Walter, told investigators that in recent years Peter had shown signs of anxiety and depression, often talking to himself and displaying a dislike for people. John confirmed his father had previously taken sedatives, but strongly rejected the suicide theory. John emphasized that in Peter's final text message, he had clearly and unambiguously stated his intention to return on September 21st, the date they had both agreed upon weeks earlier. Peter wasn't the type to abandon his commitments, especially when it came to family. He adored his son, and if he had harbored any thoughts of ending his life, why would he have carried such carefully chosen, well-prepared survival gear? To John, that possibility made absolutely no sense. Everything about Peter's preparation suggested he intended to come back. Peter was not a novice camper. He was an experienced outdoorsman who had visited Yosemite National Park on numerous occasions. He knew the network of trails intimately, could identify the local wildlife, and understood the challenges of the terrain. For him, a few nights at a campsite was routine, an interlude before retracing his route and returning home as planned. By all reasonable expectations, Peter could have easily made it back to meet his son on September 21st, just as he had promised. And yet, the reality was far stranger. If he had simply become disoriented, how could his backpack have been found more than 20 kilometers from the spot where his remains were eventually discovered? The distance alone was difficult to reconcile with the theory of a straightforward hiking accident. One explanation proposed is that Peter may have been killed by a wild animal. The name White Wolf Campground might suggest the presence of wolves, but in reality there has been no credible evidence of wolf activity in that area for decades. The main large predators here are black bears, which are indeed frequent visitors. However, their behavior is generally opportunistic. They scavenge for food left by campers rather than stalking people. In fact, records show that there have been no fatal bear attacks in this region for many decades. This absence of predatory incidents made the wildlife theory, at least in John's view, far less convincing than it might initially sound. Furthermore, Peter was carrying a shotgun, and there were no signs of an animal breach at his campsite. His food supplies, stored securely in a bear-proof container, was untouched. Some speculate that a bear may have attacked Peter at Big Oak Flat and then dragged his blue backpack eastward toward the camp. However, this theory falters when considering that the backpack was found intact, an unlikely condition if a bear had carried it dozens of kilometers. The third and most unsettling theory is that Peter was killed by a mysterious unidentified creature, possibly a massive ape, while searching for the so-called mountain monster. Yosemite National Forest, located in central California, spans elevations from 2,127 to 13,118 feet. Around 3.8 million visitors come to the park annually, but the vast majority never venture more than a short distance from the main tourist areas. Few enter the remote heart of the park, not only because of the difficult high-altitude terrain, but also because overnight stays in the backcountry require official permits. The park is the largest in the Sierra Nevada range and boasts extraordinary biodiversity, with an estimated 1,800 species of plants and animals, some of which may still be undiscovered. Local legends about an unknown creature have circulated since at least 1958. Witnesses describe these beings as standing between 1.8 and 2.7 meters tall, weighing around 280 kilograms, often accompanied by eerie screams and the sight of massive tree branches shaking without explanation. Yosemite is also one of the national parks with the highest number of unexplained disappearances, some of which have been linked to these alleged creatures. John believes his father's repeated trips into the mountains were an attempt to resolve a decades-old question, whether the thing he saw during a past encounter was real. Since that incident, Peter's personality had shifted dramatically. Once cheerful, he became reserved, paranoid, and deeply fascinated by the supernatural. He often had nightmares, waking in terror from visions of a giant mountain creature devouring him. Even the sheriff grew quiet when John recalled seeing that same blurred face again. Peter's disappearance and death remain unsolved. If his fate is connected to the campsite's condition, it's as though he never actually spent the night there at all. Evidence suggests he may have left camp on the evening of September 17th, perhaps drawn into the mountains by something, or fleeing from a sudden danger. Adding to the mystery, Peter's backpack and remains were found far apart, leading to speculation that he was killed near White Wolf Campground, and that his body and gear were later transported to two entirely different locations, Tree Shop and Double Rock Peak. There are no known animals in North America capable of carrying both a human body and a backpack over such distances, especially into a mountain crevice at 3,000 meters elevation. It's difficult to imagine what truly happened to Peter that night. Yosemite in September is a popular time for family trips and group activities. At 74, Peter should have been enjoying a peaceful retirement. Instead, he made what may have been the most fateful decision of his life, selling his home and venturing alone into the hazardous wilderness. After decades, he returned to California, once again stepping into the forest that had changed his life. Perhaps he believed that only here, deep in this wild and dangerous land, could he finally find peace. On October 19th, hunter Mark Strittmatter, 44, went hunting alone in Medicine Bow National Forest and mysteriously vanished. A year later, on October 23rd, 2020, a tourist exploring the area where Mark had disappeared stumbled upon his binoculars and loaded shotgun. Nearby, an unfired bullet was discovered in the Tang Pavilion. Another year passed before Hunter Chris and his nephew came to the Crow Mountains, near the park's border, for a hunting trip. There they accidentally discovered Mark's backpack. Following this lead, search and rescue teams found his folding knife about 300 feet from the scene, along with various items like hats and gear. A human mandible was also recovered. Forensic analysis confirmed the mandible belonged to Mark Strittmatter, the hunter who had disappeared 3 years earlier. Evidence showed he had suffered a severe blow before his death. Even more baffling, his remains appeared to have been transported dozens of kilometers away to Mount Luke. On the morning of October 19, 2019, at approximately 5:30 a.m., Mark was last seen driving a white pickup truck to Medicine Bow National Forest. Surveillance footage from a convenience store captured him at 5:46 a.m., wearing a light camouflage shirt, gray trousers, a large hat, and an orange wool cover. October is a popular time for hunting and for people to go missing. But Mark didn't plan to get lost. He had a specific goal: to hunt a Sasquatch, Medicine Bow National Forest spans over 2 million acres, covering regions of Wyoming and Colorado. The climate in the park is highly unpredictable, with significant temperature differences between morning and evening. The tallest mountains rise above 12,000 feet, approximately 3,600 meters above sea level. The Cats Forest is not only rich in wildlife, but is also steeped in legend, particularly the enduring tales of the Sasquatch. Sightings of the mysterious creature have been reported continuously since the 1970s. Over the years, many park rangers have heard stories, and some even claim to have seen the creature themselves. Mark planned to hunt in an area known as Changi Campground, located deep within the heart of the park. He was well equipped, carrying a high-caliber rifle, a folding knife, binoculars, and a backpack filled with essential survival gear. It's clear that Mark had prepared thoroughly for this expedition. Mark lived with his girlfriend of 13 years, Carrie, who often accompanied him on hunting trips. Around 11 a.m. that day, Mark tried to call her, but she didn't pick up. He then sent her a text message claiming he had nearly killed a Bigfoot. Carrie, however, struggled to make sense of Mark's increasingly paranoid and eccentric behavior. She believed creatures like Bigfoot were nothing more than myths from folklore. That day, the weather forecast had warned of an approaching blizzard. Concerned for his safety, Carrie called Mark back and urged him not to continue hunting in such dangerous conditions. There was a moment of silence on the line, then Mark abruptly hung up. Kelly tried calling Mark again, but was never able to reach him. On October 20th, Kelly returned home and realized that Mark had not come back as expected. Concerned, she went to the police station to check if there had been any reports of an accident involving Mark. Unfortunately, she was the first person to report Mark missing. Local police began investigating Mark Stripmater's disappearance at approximately 3:44 p.m. that day. Instead of going home right away, Kelly drove alone to Changi Campground, the area where Mark had planned to hunt. There, she found Mark's white pickup truck parked at the junction of forest highways 801 and 803. By the time Kelly discovered the vehicle, it was already covered in a thick layer of snow. Inside, she found Mark's cell phone, wallet, cigarettes, and other personal items. The keys were located in the vehicle's mailbox, a habit Mark was known for. The only items missing were his shotgun and backpack. Kelly attempted to start the vehicle and found it to be in good working condition, with no signs of damage or malfunction. The presence of the cell phone inside the truck suggested that Mark had briefly returned to the vehicle before heading back into the forest. Following Mark's disappearance, authorities quickly launched an investigation. However, the heavy snow blanketing the mountains made search and rescue efforts extremely difficult. Despite deploying multiple search teams, the initial efforts yielded no results. It wasn't until a year later that a significant clue finally emerged. On October 23rd, 2020, a mountain climber discovered a pair of binoculars and a shotgun in the area where Mark had gone missing, about 600 meters from his vehicle. The tourist who found them informed the police about the condition of the shotgun. When recovered, the shotgun was loaded and an unfired bullet was also found nearby. According to authorities, the weapon had been fired at least once, but the final bullet remained unused. Mark's girlfriend, Kelly, confirmed that the items were indeed the same ones Mark had taken with him on the day he disappeared. Based on this discovery, police concluded that Mark had likely died. A few days later, a team of 12 civilian volunteers organized a search in the area in hopes of finding more clues or possibly Mark's remains, but came up empty-handed. It wasn't until a year later that the case finally saw a significant development. On October 16, 2022, the local police received a call from a hunter who claimed to have discovered Mark Stripmater's remains in Rock Mountain, a location nearly 17 miles from where Mark's vehicle had originally been found. According to the report, a hunter named Chris and his nephew were hunting in the Rock Mountain area when the nephew spotted a backpack on the ground. Inside were clothing and boots. Upon examining the contents, Chris found Mark Stripmater's hunting license. Police later arrived and discovered additional belongings nearby, including a human mandible, several broken ribs, and other personal items such as receipts and a folding knife. These were found within a 300-foot radius of the site. Mark's clothes were also located, but had been completely torn apart. After forensic examination, it was confirmed that the bones belonged to Mark Schrick. His remains showed signs of significant trauma, but the exact cause of death could not be determined. There was no clear evidence of foul play, although investigators couldn't rule out the possibility that he had been attacked and killed by a wild animal. However, it remained unclear what kind of creature could have inflicted such extensive damage. The police later reached out to Mark's girlfriend, Kelly, hoping she might provide new and valuable information. Kelly told them that Mark had once sent her a text message claiming he had nearly captured a Bigfoot. However, since she didn't believe in such creatures, she hadn't taken the message seriously at the time. She also recalled asking Mark why he would go hunting in snowy conditions. Mark explained that Bigfoot was typically extremely cautious and avoided human contact during normal weather, but would let its guard down during snowfall, making it the best time to track it. When asked about Mark's motivation for hunting Bigfoot, Kelly revealed that Mark believed she had been stalked and harassed by the creature. He claimed that while hunting, a large, heavily built beast had followed him down the mountain, even throwing stones at him. Mark had managed to record part of the encounter on his phone. Despite being armed with a powerful weapon, Kelly said Mark had been overwhelmed by fear during the experience. At some point, he became convinced that he had been attacked, or nearly attacked, by a juvenile Bigfoot. For Mark, hunting the creature may have been both an act of revenge and a way to prove himself as a skilled hunter, according to Kelly. However, police were unable to draw any solid conclusions based on her statements. Ultimately, Mark's death was classified as an unexplained, possibly supernatural occurrence. Despite the passage of several years, controversy still surrounds the cause of his death. The most widely accepted theory is that Mark may have died from an overdose of illegal drugs. In an interview, Mark's father, Mike, expressed doubt that his son could have simply gotten lost. Mark had previously worked as a forest guide and was highly familiar with the terrain and wildlife in the park. However, Mike also acknowledged that his son had a history of drug use. At the time of the incident, Mark was under medical care and taking prescribed medication to support his recovery. Police records support this, showing that drugs used to suppress withdrawal symptoms were found in Mark's backpack. Additionally, 2 other hunters later shared a detail that added another layer to the mystery. On the day of the blizzard, 2 hunters, Jacob and Cameron, reported seeing Mark trekking up the mountain. Concerned about the hazardous conditions, they approached him and warned that hunting during a blizzard was extremely dangerous. An argument broke out between them. In the case report, Jacob noted that Mark was acting strangely, highly agitated and unusually excited, as if he had been provoked or disturbed. One theory suggests that Mark may have been abducted by a UFO. This idea draws parallels to a case from the 1970s, in which a man named Carl Higdon claimed he was abducted by aliens at a campsite in Shawnee and transported to a distant forest. Similarly, Mark's body was eventually discovered in Rock Mountain, about 27 kilometers, 17 miles, from where his truck was found. To hike that distance on foot, especially through snow-covered wilderness at an elevation of over 3,000 meters, about 10,000 feet, would take around 6 hours without rest or food, an unlikely feat under such extreme conditions. For this reason, the alien abduction theory has gained traction with some people. A third popular theory is that Mark fell victim to a legendary creature, possibly Bigfoot. The condition of his shotgun suggested he was either hunting something or defending himself at the time. However, the fact that one bullet remained unfired in the chamber raises the possibility that something happened before he could take another shot. Adding to the mystery, Mark's binoculars and shotgun were found far from the location of his backpack. This discrepancy has led some to speculate that he may have been attacked at Changi Campground, and his body later moved to Rock Mountain. No known North American animal has the strength or behavior to transport a human body several kilometers up a mountain to an elevation of 3,000 meters. During the extensive search operation, rescue teams came across something unusual: massive footprints leading deeper into the mountains. These prints were significantly larger than any known animal tracks in the region, sparking immediate curiosity and concern among the searchers. Despite thorough efforts to trace the origin of the footprints, no conclusive evidence linked them directly to Mark's disappearance. Nevertheless, their existence added another layer of mystery to the case and intensified speculation about what might have happened to him. Some believe these footprints could belong to an unknown creature, possibly the very Sasquatch Mark was reportedly hunting, while others considered less conventional explanations. In the aftermath of the case, famed investigator David Paulides, who specializes in mysterious disappearances in wilderness areas, became involved. Paulides, known for his Missing 411 series, which documents baffling and unsolved vanishings in national parks and forests, interviewed Mark's girlfriend, Kelly, as well as others connected to the case. Intrigued by the strange circumstances and unexplained elements surrounding Mark's disappearance, Paulides chose to include this case in his ongoing research. The inclusion helped bring wider attention to the mystery, sparking new interest and debate among enthusiasts of the unexplained. Even now, years after the incident, Mark's disappearance remains enveloped in uncertainty and unanswered questions. It is a haunting enigma, much like the bullet that was never fired from the shotgun found near his last known location. That bullet symbolizes the unresolved nature of the case. Mark never got the chance to pull the trigger or fully conclude his hunt. Meanwhile, Kelly continues to hold on to hope, waiting for some sign or answer that may never come. The hunt that began with high hopes and careful preparation ended abruptly, leaving behind a story of mystery and loss that still resonates deeply with those who knew him. In September of 1992, two hunters were exploring the Badger Creek wilderness in Oregon when they made an unexpected discovery: belongings of a missing person. The items belonged to Corey Fay, a 17-year-old who had disappeared nearly a year earlier. They found his backpack and hunting rifle nearby, and authorities later located his jacket on a ridge at about 6,500 feet in altitude. The situation became even more eerie when fragments of his bones and a single tooth were uncovered. But the strangest part of all were the large footprints found nearby, footprints that didn't appear to belong to any ordinary human. Corey was far from an ordinary teenager. Born in Beaverton, Oregon, he had extensive hunting experience and had received professional outdoor survival training. He knew how to survive in the wilderness. On November 23, 1991, Corey and his friend Mark headed out for a hunting trip in the rugged Badger Creek wilderness, a region known for its elk. They were well prepared, bringing plenty of food, a rifle, and even a thermal blanket for warmth. However, the day didn't go as planned. Despite hours of searching, they hadn't spotted a single animal. And to make matters worse, they began to lose their bearings. By 6:30 p.m., the two decided to split up and search on their own, despite hunting at night being prohibited. When Mark returned to their car later that evening, Corey was nowhere to be found. After waiting and searching for a while, Mark grew worried and contacted the sheriff's office. What followed was a massive search effort, with over 250 people combing the area. They were assisted by helicopters, horses, and trained search dogs. For 10 days, they scoured a 12-square-mile area, but there was no sign of Corey. Months passed, and despite help from volunteers and even the FBI, nothing was found, until nearly a year later when the hunters made their discovery. When investigators returned to the site, they conducted a detailed search. Corey's jacket was found on a steep mountain ridge, buried under deep snow at an altitude of about 6,500 feet, 2,000 meters. A mile away, fragments of his skull and a single tooth were recovered. However, there were no other remains. No ribcage or large bones like femurs, just scattered fragments. The sheriff overseeing the case was puzzled. He remarked that it made no sense. Why would a 17-year-old, no matter how experienced, trek so far in such harsh conditions, climbing to that altitude in deep snow? And then there were the footprints. Large, too large to be human. To this day, no one knows what really happened to Corey Fay. Was it the wilderness itself? A tragic accident? Or as some have suggested, something far more sinister? Whatever the truth may be, it remains one of Oregon's most haunting mysteries. There are so many strange aspects surrounding Corey's death that make it seem even more bizarre and unsettling. After reviewing all the evidence, even the police couldn't come up with a clear explanation. I've gathered some of the most common theories that are circulating online. Let's go through them one by one. The first theory is that Corey was either murdered or accidentally shot. Some media outlets speculated that Corey could have been killed by someone he knew, or perhaps mistaken for an animal and shot by another hunter. At one point, Mark, his hunting partner, was even considered a suspect. However, he easily passed a polygraph test, and more importantly, there was no clear motive. Mark and Corey had grown up together like brothers. Additionally, the fact that Corey's backpack, jacket, and bones were found scattered across 3 completely separate locations made the idea of foul play less likely. It seems improbable that a killer would go through all that effort to scatter Corey's belongings. As a result, This theory started to lose credibility. The second theory is that Corey died from hypothermia. It's possible that he got lost while trying to find his way back and ended up wandering aimlessly. His family supports this idea, thinking that he may have been out there for some time before succumbing to the cold. However, there's a major flaw in this theory. Why would he head uphill? Corey had a compass and knew roughly where their car was parked. Plus, any experienced outdoorsman knows that the best course of action when you're lost is to stay put and wait for rescue. On top of that, Corey had enough food in his backpack and a solar-powered electric blanket. If he used those supplies wisely, he should have been able to survive for several days. The third theory is suicide. One of Corey's classmates mentioned that he'd had a rough week before he disappeared, including an argument with an older student. Some wonder if he became so overwhelmed that he intentionally wandered into the wilderness. However, Corey's family completely rejects this idea. They describe him as a responsible, loving young man who cared deeply about his family, and they're convinced he would never do something so impulsive. Then there's the fourth theory, an animal attack. Some believe Corey might have been attacked by a cougar. However, there's a problem with this idea. Corey was carrying a hunting rifle. It seems unlikely that he would have been caught off guard by such an attack. Even if he had died from exposure and been scavenged by a cougar, why would the animal drag his backpack, jacket, and bones to 3 separate locations? Another odd detail is that his bones were found at an elevation of over 6,500 feet, in a high-altitude, snowy, isolated area. Definitely not a spot where most predators would typically roam. Plus, there were no bite marks, no large chunks of bone left behind. Nothing you would expect from an animal attack. Finally, there's one more theory, and it's the kind that truly sends chills down your spine. On September 18th, 1992, a local newspaper ran a story revealing that during the search for Corey the previous November, a helicopter crew had spotted massive human-like footprints in the snow. At first, they thought the prints were left by searchers, but later, after comparing photos, something shocking was revealed. These footprints were enormous, roughly twice the size of an adult man's foot. They were deeply embedded in the snow, and some of them remained visible even after the snow had melted, suggesting whatever made them was incredibly heavy. The most eerie part was that the footprints appeared to have been made by something walking barefoot. What could have created such footprints? And could they be connected to Corey's disappearance? No one knows for sure. In a strange coincidence, someone in a community discussion about the incident shared similar photos they claimed to have found while hunting in the same area. This sparked a chilling theory that quickly spread across the internet. Corey Fay was killed by giants, creatures like Bigfoot, the Yeti, or wild man beings, which aren't unheard of in the Oregon wilderness. Former California Sheriff David Paulides, who has investigated countless cases of missing persons, made a startling and controversial claim that has left many wondering about the true nature of certain disappearances. Paulides believes that the unexplained vanishing of hikers, hunters, and tourists in national parks and remote wilderness areas may be linked to something far more mysterious than just ordinary accidents or foul play. He suggests that some of these disappearances could be attributed to legendary creatures, like Bigfoot, the Yeti, or other cryptids, known to inhabit such regions. With his experience in handling these cases, Paulides has built a case based on evidence, speculation, and numerous eerie incidents that seem to suggest that these creatures may be involved in the strange, often unexplainable disappearances of individuals in some of the most isolated parts of the world. In the case of Corey Field, this theory opens up a chilling possibility. Based on the odd details surrounding his disappearance, his scattered belongings, the bizarre footprints, and the extreme remote locations where his remains were found, one unsettling theory takes shape about how Corey may have met his end that night. On the day of his disappearance, Corey and his friend Mark had separated in the rugged Wallowa wilderness, each hoping to find signs of the elusive elk they were hunting before the sun dipped below the horizon. Mark, after a short search, returned to their car, but Corey ventured deeper into the forest. As dusk began to settle in, Corey became disoriented. The dense wilderness and harsh terrain were unforgiving, and soon, he had lost all sense of direction, unknowingly moving deeper into the wild. With nightfall creeping in, Corey found himself on unfamiliar ground, territory that, unbeknownst to him, was already inhabited by something much larger, something much more dangerous than anything he could have anticipated. At some point, Corey wandered into the domain of a Bigfoot-like creature. As the evening wore on, the creature began stalking him, keeping his distance but following him for a long while. The creature, with its superior strength and stealth, would have had no trouble keeping up with Corey as he grew weaker, disoriented, and vulnerable in the encroaching darkness. When Corey's exhaustion reached its peak, the creature struck. The first things to be lost in the attack were his hunting rifle and backpack, likely discarded in the chaos of the ambush. It's unclear how the creature may have incapacitated Corey, but the nature of the attack seems to suggest that it was swift and brutal. Once Corey was down, the creature dragged his body up a steep mountain ridge, leaving behind pieces of his clothing that investigators later determined marked a second crime scene. The area was high up in the mountains, an isolated and difficult-to-reach spot. Using its enormous feet to easily navigate through the deep snow, the creature carried Corey's remains to an even higher and more remote area, one that was nearly impossible for humans to reach, let alone traverse in such harsh conditions. There, the creature dismembered Corey, likely consuming parts of his body in a way consistent with the grisly behaviors attributed to some cryptid creatures. The remains were then scattered even farther into the mountains, as if the creature had deliberately hidden them, making the task of finding them nearly impossible. When viewed through this lens, the bizarre details surrounding Corey's disappearance, the scattered belongings, the oversized footprints in the snow, and the distant and remote locations start to make a grim kind of sense. It paints a picture of a creature that stalked its prey, attacked when it was most vulnerable, and then carried the remains away to conceal the evidence. Though this theory offers a chilling explanation, it remains just that, speculation. However, the mystery of Corey Field's death persists, and these theories are among the most disturbing to those who have followed the case. Sadly, Corey's death remains an unsolved mystery to this day. His family, especially his grandparents, have borne the hardest burden of this tragedy. His grandfather, heartbroken and in disbelief over the ordeal, tearfully reflected on the journey to the spot where Corey's remains were found. To reach the spot where they found his remains, his grandfather said, "That boy would have had to walk 10 miles through deep snow. I can't imagine anyone making it that far. I always told him, if you get lost, head downhill. I can't even fathom what he must have endured out there. Our only wish now is to recover the rest of Corey's remains so we can finally lay him to rest where he belongs." The pain of not knowing exactly what happened to Corey, and the absence of answers, continues to haunt his loved ones, leaving them with nothing but grief and unanswered questions.